What's the big idea?
All right, welcome to another edition of Volleyballology. I am Zuby, and
I'm Eric.
and I'm Zuby.
The mics do sound way better this time.
They do, yes. So the topic today is last time we talked, we talked about coaches, and this time we want to focus a little more on
Good
parents.
Coach, bad coach.
Yeah, last time was good coach, bad coach. This time we want to talk about parents and like essentially how to raise a volleyball player. And through this, we're going to cover good things parents do and bad things parents do, and productive things parents can do, and very non or unproductive things that parents can do. And so Eric,
Cool.
I guess before we get started, maybe we'll find out. Eric, how's your life going?
It's not bad. It's work's been pretty crazy, as I've been telling you about.
Yeah.
But it's finally calmed down a little bit, and now that it has, I've been able to like exercise and stuff, which is healing a whole bunch of built up problems. I was telling you, like when we did provincials and nats, right? I just didn't feel at my best, but I wanted to be there because like how awesome of an opportunity was it to have Pete asked me to play, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was also an interesting thing, like playing volleyball competitively when I know I'm physically not doing too well, but I just like made sure I'm going to go out there anyways. So sorry, I'm kind of already ranting here, but that was actually a neat little mental thing because there was a bunch of times where we got into, we had a really slow start to the tournaments. We ended up getting fighting for bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And like at one tournament, Pete was dying. He was cramping up. Right. And I couldn't believe how much pain he pushed himself through. It's like, he's crazy. And then the next tournament, I had no legs like the whole day. Right. But we still managed to get there. And if anything, my legs got better as it went on. So just pushing myself through that. But anyways, that's another story. So right now is that I have more time and I'm able to finally sleep better, eat better, and exercise. And just a huge mental improvement basically from, we talk about this all the time, where like as soon as I'm able to exercise and like lift some heavy stuff, you just feel better, right? So
Yeah,
it's crazy how much of a filter it puts on life for me.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's something we all do is we go through these stages of working out, feeling great, and then for some reason we fall off, and then it's an interesting thing. Eh? Like we talked about this before too, where athletes sometimes I think get into this more where is it a part of the athlete that wants the
like
challenge?
to fall off?
Yeah, like it's interesting because a lot of athletes, I mean, you look at pro athletes who retire, they tend to get, like I know when I stopped playing regularly, my body, like you kind of let your body go for a bit, and then and then you go through these spurts of like, okay, now I'm playing a lot more and I'm going to train for something, and then you go through it and then you do well and then you take the stop. It's weird, it's a cycle, but it's one of those mysteries of life too, because we all know the answer of physical fitness and how good it makes us feel, and we all get on the stretch of doing it, and then like 2 weeks later we're eating Twinkies again, and, farting everywhere, and going scratching our bellies, going, "Oh, my back hurts." And
that feedback loop, man, it works in the good direction and the bad direction, right? Like when you're overtired and you're in pain physically from just like chronic pain or whatever, you will go for the bad food more, right?
Yeah,
and I will get on my phone and just look at garbage, and like I'll keep myself staying up late. I have no idea why, but like, and then I'll force myself into like I'll sabotage the next day by sleeping poorly. It's really
interesting.
brutal.
It's very fascinating.
It works the other way around too, though, right? Like already I'm on like it sounds terrible, but like a 6-day streak. But it builds momentum, right?
It's fascinating to me that people self-sabotage. We don't like. It's part of us, I think, is...
some people don't.
Some people don't. Some people are pretty...
Some people are really good.
But it's funny because it can also be rooted in self-sabotage because they can overdo it. They go very far. Like some people who are like, they can become like obsessed.
Yeah, or they're so afraid of the sabotage, right? That they...
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure probably everyone knows what we're talking about. Anyone who's ever exercised.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, but you're right. I find too that sometimes I tell people all the time that they crave what they are lacking. So if life gets hectic and stressful and you're not exercising, then your body craves some other form of pleasing you, right? Like it's high salt, high fat, high everything, which, fats aren't bad. Obviously that's the old 80s, 90s thinking, but you crave the junk when you need it. And then when you're working out really well, like you said, when you're in a good stretch, you don't crave the crap anymore. And that's why I always tell people too, like sometimes I think that, and we'll talk more about this too. We talk a lot about this off camera, the marketing of, sort of the business world loves to over technical, they like to make everything over complicated so they can feel like the expert. This happens in coaching. It happens in every industry where they'll use terminology that's very selective and measured.
Are you talking about nutrition now?
Yeah, nutrition as well in general, or even the fitness industry, any industry. They love to make things seem very technical to reinforce their authority. And then they charge for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, look at the supplement industry. Right?
Yeah, supplement. And I think that it's, I always tell this to you too, like it's not rocket science, I will say. And that's one of my things where like, okay, so you exercise and then you eat well and and you sleep well.
Yeah,
like it's really that basic. But that's not something that's going to generate a lot of profits for people. So, so I find that's the thing. And so speaking of profits and for my life, thanks for asking, Eric.
I was busy sipping my coffee.
Right on the tip of your tongue. I'm sure you were going to ask. But so I spent the weekend getting my daughter ready and prepped to move into to university.
Oh, you mean loss of profits?
Sorry?
You were segueing profits into your daughter, but you mean loss because the cost.
Speaking of, yes, good. So not only do you not ask about my life, but then when I start pouring out my heart, you trample all over it.
Well, what's the profit connection here? You meant
I don't know. It was
gain
just
of education.
It's called a segue.
But doesn't it need to be relevant?
It does. It has to do with finances. Okay, for sure. Finances.
Yeah.
Man, I didn't know I was on trial. So anyway, but yes. Speaking of profits, so my daughter, yes, it was very expensive, and moving my firstborn into university residence, and it was funny because all summer, talk about expectations versus reality or irrational fears, right? The all summer she was terrified of moving in because it was a resident, a triple room, so 3 people in the room, and she had this process where they had a process where you had to pick your rooms online, and she was, her turn to go pick was very late in the process, so all the rooms were gone, all the single rooms. Everybody wants single rooms.
They tell you when?
They tell you when you can go pick, and so she went online and was frantic. She's like, "Oh my God, all the single rooms are gone! All the single rooms are gone!" And then we were like, "Okay, there's this triple room, right?"
First thing she goes for is a single room.
Everybody, all the kids want single rooms, and which is sort of connected to today, I think, and the mindset of people today, right, where they don't want to accommodate, they don't want to share things, they just want things for themselves. And coming out of COVID, you could argue that it's nice to go into that mode again, but whatever. So she was frantic and like, "Oh my God, that's the only room left." And she's like, "Pick it, pick it, pick it." And then we see there's might be another room somewhere else. And she's like, "Go back to that one, unselected, go back to that one." That's the way she talks. My daughter's a Muppet. Yeah. So so she so then we go back, and then that room is gone, and then she's like, "Oh my God, go and get the other one again." And it's just like a big production. And then we finally ended up on the triple room, and she was kind of bummed out about it all summer, but we go there this weekend, and it was great. She met the other girls in the room. They had the exact same experience. They all did the exact same game of, "I don't want that. Oh my God, it's gone. Go back and get it." And but the cool thing is the triple room is the biggest room in the area. It used to be a common room.
They're the ones who are going to gain out of this.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. And it has a bank of cabinets, a full-size fridge, and a double sink in the room, and no other rooms have sinks in the room. So she loved it, and also she had instant friends. So like the first day, rather than leaving her alone in some room and hoping she makes friends and all that stuff, which was tough for her mother in particular. I like when she didn't get the single room. I like when she had to face that.
That's a perfect experience for you guys as parents.
Yeah.
Probably even more so because it's your daughter, right? Like, I don't know, maybe
for me, like for someone who likes the kid to go through struggle, I was happy that she didn't get the single room. I was happy that she was going to be
Yeah.
forced into that awkwardness.
Yeah.
And I was happy that, she was going to be forced
Well, the
to
single room
accommodate.
is its own struggle, right? Because then you're in there.
Yeah, but
and
that's not what
then-
people think, right?
Yeah, but well, I mean, it is a struggle though. That's not what you're right. It's not what they think.
Yeah.
But it is you're kind of worse off because then you have to. Well, you just go to bed. You sit there and you wait to go to bed. Like you organize yourself, and then the next day you get up and you still don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And like,
Well, it's funny because she's
trying to
finding that
figure out where to
everybody,
go.
well, all the kids want to party nonstop. The people who don't know anybody, because they're finding it's hard to be alone, right?
Right.
It's easy in the sense that I can, you can fart whenever you want and you don't have to share things, right? You don't have to share things.
You can
right?
be a cave troll.
Yeah. Like I'm farting right now and it's very easy. It's effortless.
Actually, that would have been perfect for me because I was a huge gamer then, and then I just would have been it was perfect.
I thought you were going to say you were a huge farter then.
Well, I probably would have been too.
Yeah.
maybe.
Still, yeah, I think you still are. I think it's safe to say if this broadcast had smell.
Well, actually, remember my my vegan stage? I had some.
Yes, you
yeah.
had a vegan stage. I remember that. Yeah.
I remember playing one tournament there where my stomach wasn't doing well.
It's tricky. Yeah, we don't want to.
I probably shouldn't have brought this up.
Yeah, well, no, it's fine. We don't want to. Eric. People are vegans, and Eric tried it. It wasn't for him, and
Yeah.
no,
I'm not blaming. Yeah, I'm definitely not blaming that on
no,
vegetarian or veganism.
no. You just found it wasn't for you.
Yeah, I don't know what it was.
You were on it for a while though. You gave it a good long try, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the bottom line is my daughter ended up doing something that she didn't want to do, and it ended up being fine and maybe even better than she thought. And so I was very happy with that. And she's now finding that a lot of the kids that are alone in a room, they're happy to have that because it's safe. Right? They like to do the safe, easy thing. That's what I meant.
Contained.
Yeah, and like no accommodating, no sharing. Yeah, that's part of a problem in our society, right? And she, but she finds that it's been good. So, and she got along. Her roommates are great people. She had friends instantly, which is a real perk. So yeah, so that's going on. And the reason why I don't mind going on about that, rambling on about that, is because today's topic is about parents and what they can do, like we mentioned. And this was interesting to me because I always there's a justifiable maybe case to be made for the idea that universities and colleges are kind of obsolete, and that there's limited courses, there's an infinite number of things people can do now on their smartphones and business and
Right.
life. They can go volunteer and work for free somewhere and maybe come out less in debt, or
Yeah.
you can go somewhere and work for free for 4 years in an industry you really want, volunteer,
Yeah.
and you'll be further ahead financially and maybe even in terms of knowledge of the industry.
With the internet, I mean, if you're someone with crazy focus and ingenuity and researching where to find, you can
Discipline, yeah.
Yeah, crazy amounts of discipline, which is difficult to find in someone that age. You could
But
probably
if it's their passion,
you
if
can
it's
totally
their
educate
passion,
yourself
Yeah.
without.
yeah, I think if it's
I'm
their
guessing.
if it's their passion,
Yeah.
then it's easier to get into rather than being dragged
If
into
it's-
these topics
yeah.
they don't relate to.
But that's why they try to make a lot of these professions gated by the institution of education, right?
Mhm,
Like,
mhm.
of course, and then for good reason. Like, we have to have doctors go
Yes.
through this because, right?
Yeah, the question is
Obvious.
who pays for who's paying for who's creating the textbooks, who's creating the
Yeah.
industry, who funds the
Yeah.
institution. I mean, these are bigger
Textbooks
questions that come up.
cost hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, and also like, but what I mean is like who funds the curriculum, that matters too, right? Like that's you can change the way a whole industry is angled or facing or thinking by
Right.
who funds the curriculum. People
Right.
don't ask these questions. Who funds the authors who write curriculum? I was a teacher for a long time, and so I would go through curriculum documents. I had an opportunity to write curriculum too for history. And, sometimes there's pressure to make sure that the curriculum documents are
So that
the right way.
basically, that is how industries are influenced. That's one of the avenues.
100%. Yeah. It's always about, the follow the money. kind of line, right?
Yeah.
It's always, the money is what dictates how institutions think. And, universities, I used to ask this when I was, working as a counselor. We'd have post-secondary institutions come into the school.
Yeah.
And I would always ask the question of the rep. I would say, so who owns your school, right? Because I know it's government funded. There's a lot of government funding that goes there, but who owns the school? Like who gets
Yeah.
the money, who gets the tuition, who is in charge of seeing those profits, losses, Is the board just people? Do they get paid huge salaries? And who owns the school?
You know, there's always that wall that you walk by with just endless pictures or names of like people.
Yeah,
who
donors.
are
Yeah,
donors.
yeah.
But then there's like the board,
yeah.
right? And then
But nobody could answer that question. And it's interesting because
the people on the board took a salary. They weren't the ones funding it, I don't think.
Mhm. Well, I mean, it's true that so the government just pays universities and colleges, get their funding, gives them their allocated funds, as long as they're teaching what society needs.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, and then government, of course, is influenced by
Yeah.
corporate wealth. I mean, I was a history major, and, you know, if you study the origins of government, it's very tricky to see. I mean, it's very interesting to see who went into government.
And the better your institution is at getting these graduates out and then into the workforce, the better of a job you're doing, the more money you're getting, probably. And then that's how it.
Mm-hmm. And that's why too people have a hard time seeing outside of their box that they're educated in, right? Like I even as a history teacher, I was always you know, we would have discussions on some things in historical context and conferences, and I was, you know, very few of us were looking around going, okay, but you're just looking at the topic in this little box. What about the whole cause of the issue that's really out here that you're not even analyzing?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I remember, you know, just, you know, lots of topics in history where people don't look at the root cause or the real background issue. They just look at the microcosm of, you know, trench warfare, not, you know, who's making all the money off the weapons.
Yeah.
And, you know, were they influential in influencing the cause of this war or that war? So just stuff like that. So counterculture sort of thinking or understanding root causes doesn't happen. And that's where I think hopefully in this podcast, we can start to articulate that to people, that there are root and deeper causes to things. So like maybe we should bring it to today's topic.
Yeah, we're getting kind of into the weeds.
Yeah,
here.
we're getting into the weeds, but it is related because we do want to bring critical thinking to some topics that typically don't get a lot of critical
thinking.
Right.
I think a lot of people, you know, hearing what you're talking about here, some people may not want to hear that stuff.
No, yes.
You know,
I do upset people. At parties, people move away from me.
You don't want to, yeah, it's kind of scary when you start to think
government.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, getting back to...
Yeah. So today's, I think the underlying thing in today's topic that we need to address, and it ties in with the coaches topic we had too, is that I taught, again, full disclosure. So I was a psychology teacher, a counselor, and also a history teacher for a long time. And I worked a lot with parents, and I worked a lot with students, and I worked with players and athletes, and I was an athlete myself. Yeah, a lot of coaching too. So one of the things that I think is the root and underlying cause of both issues, whether it's coach or parent, that are sort of doing the wrong things, is that it stems from deep insecurity. And we mentioned that earlier in another episode too. And my theory is that, you know, in the 80s, people my age and a little bit older were raised on, we were the first mass media marketed culture. So in the 70s, there were very few TV channels. There was less focus on how a person or a thing looked. In general, you could see it if you go watch.
Starting then, yeah.
It was well. It's always been around. So ever since television was a major one in changing how people looked. I mean, there were newspapers too before that, but you know, you go all the way back to photography. But TV, when it came on, like you know the story about JFK and Nixon, like JFK. So JFK and Nixon was the first televised U.S. debate, and if you looked at both candidates historically, Nixon had much more experience, but it was televised, this debate in 1960. And
he had experience like talking.
Yeah, he was an experienced politician. He was experienced. So on paper, Nixon was the better candidate, but this was the first one on TV. And Kennedy was handsome. Kennedy was taller. Kennedy didn't sweat under the lights of the TV camera, and he won that election. It was the closest election in U.S. history prior to like the last couple we had.
Really?
Yeah. So Bush and Gore, I think, became closer, and then Biden and Trump became pretty close, was even closer. So, but that was for a long time the closest one, and Kennedy won it, they say, because of his performance on TV.
Right.
So I mean, the aesthetic of so just going back, we're rambling again. But, but the idea is that. Yeah, I'm such a history teacher. Right? I just can't.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you were.
So no. Yeah. So what it was I was just saying that the aesthetic the 80s was the explosion of TV channels
Right.
and mass media and MTV. And so those little kids grew up to be these parents and these coaches today. And that insecurity from years of media telling them how they should look, how they should feel, what size of pants they should wear, what size of their bra, all that stuff. Those people grew up extremely insecure. And it's only getting worse now with social media. And so when you're insecure and you have that sort of, I don't want to say self-loathing, but dislike of yourself, it manifests in anger towards others, right?
Well, because that is the foundation to these markets, is playing off people's guilt, right? Like
Fear, insecurity,
yeah,
guilt.
I remember.
Like I used to tell my classes, if you loved yourself, that's the worst thing for business.
Yeah.
Like you would never buy the fancy, you wouldn't need the fancy haircut. You wouldn't buy the fancy car. You wouldn't buy the fancy house because your self-esteem was intact, right?
Yeah.
So they love to attack self-esteem historically. And I think we're seeing what 20, 30 years of attacking people's self-esteem does to a mindset. So when a kid is not getting playing time or failing school as a sport, the parent can't stand to see it because it's a reflection of them, and that insecure parent. Whereas, now I don't want to say that I'm like the perfect parent, but because I had accomplished stuff in volleyball, I don't look at my kids failing. And when I see this, when I meet other high-level players that I knew or when their kids are in the programs, they don't have the same insecurity around the failure of their child in the sport. They're not
as other parents,
as parents who haven't accomplished something there or in other areas too. So like,
well, you don't know what there could be other
crap,
but as
yes, but that's a quick
as a general
one.
history. We're all victims.
Well, that's
of
the
all
easiest one for me to spot because like if the parent is a volleyball player and I'm like, oh yeah, you're not freaking out either because you get it. We've done this. We're confident in this area.
And if they were a volleyball player and they're freaking out, then that's
probably
that thing, like you're saying, that started up in the 80s. There's still...
That's possible. Yeah, it could even affect... But it does... There is a
but...
link, though, between your level of success or excellence. Like, so if people have attained a level of excellence in anything, even if it's not volleyball, they tend to not be as insecure parents in sports, too, right? Like, because they understand process.
Yeah.
They understand failure, the benefits of it. They understand that... well, you just got to work harder, or okay, yeah, things aren't fair. So like anybody who's gone that route, I'm lucky because I had the sports background and then also was able to, some business success that I've worked in. I know what long hours mean. I know that setbacks aren't the end of the world. And I've learned that, and you've learned that too through your process of, playing high level. That, how many times a shank and a block happen to people, a missed serve. Whereas I see other people, they hang off of every point, coaches and players, and parents and players. The insecure ones, they suffer more. So the key to all of this, really, like if we were to solve it, if anybody wants to turn it off right now, is, work on your self-esteem. And how you work on self-esteem, you do hard things, you fail, and you keep working, and you succeed. I always tell my kids, knowing that I was a teacher, they get me to try it. One of them always would try to get me to read over their paper before they hand it in. And I eventually said, listen, if I keep reading over your paper for you, when you get the great mark, you're not going to feel that proud because I'm doing too much for you. Mm-hmm. And if you get a poor mark, on your own, then you're going to understand what you did wrong and fix it. But if you get a great mark on your own, that's the best thing. Because that's when you get confidence, right? By doing great things on your own, having success, your definition of success, whatever that is, by working hard and suffering a bit and understanding that the suffering paid off later. We kind of interrupt things, right? We don't let kids suffer.
Yeah.
Going back to the going back to the university thing, I wanted my kid to suffer because I understand the value of suffering. And parents can't stand to watch their kids suffer. Yeah. And I hope that more parents can talk to their kids about the value of suffering in the moment because it leads to great things. I love Matthew McConaughey has a book, right? It's called Green Lights, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool because he says that, every time in his life he's hit an obstacle, he thought it was a red light. Yeah. Like even his father's death, like as bad as that was for him, it devastated him. It ended up being like in a weird way the best thing that ever happened to him in his life for other things that came out of the tragedy of the death. So it's kind of cool.
I've had with work, how I've told you, it's been super rough. Like this past past year, whatever. So what I do for work is I fix medical equipment, diagnostic equipment, and it's been pretty rough, like over the past year, just like short-staffed, underworked, whatever. But there's been so many times where it's just been brutally tough on me, like mentally, physically, whatever. Just trying to fix these things because they have to be running like 98% uptime. But there's so many times, you know, I just want to like pull the plug and like
pull the plug. You mean kill a patient?
No. If the machine's down, they're not scanning anyone. I mean,
okay.
pull the plug. Like,
okay. Yeah, you shouldn't.
Yeah.
I hope you don't say that around the office.
The techs would probably laugh. Yeah,
they would
people
laugh.
who work in healthcare have a pretty morbid sense of humor.
Yeah,
actually.
that's true. Actually, you're right.
Yeah, because the stuff they see.
Yeah, it's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway, you were talking.
You were
talking about killing patients.
No, being in tough situations, and I remember there's a part in my head that just wants someone else to come deal with this for me, right? But then I know. But then, you know, I have this inner dialogue, and there's no one coming to help and save me or whatever. It's just me, right? So I'm like, I may as well
How long do you think you sit there thinking about this?
I wonder. I'd just be sitting like...
Do you picture me like a good me and a bad me on your shoulder?
Yeah, I picture the
giving
guru
advice.
you and
the guru. I am Eric's guru, by the way, in case anybody knows. Eric comes to me for life advice, and I charge him irrational amounts of money to assist him. I'm a bit of a life coach.
And that's all.
Sorry, did I cut you off? Did I cut you off? Oh, I cut you off.
No,
okay. So you were talking about.
I'm just saying.
That you.
My point is just to say that like I had to get through these shitty situations, and then when I did, you know, I was noticeably self-reflection better off for it. You know what I mean? It's happened multiple times with this job. It even happened a month and a half ago. It was one of the worst situations basically you could be in, right? But you know, you get, and that's at the beginning of the show I was talking about how I was so physically messed up right now because I've literally just been driving to a hospital, fixing, like crouched over some stuff, sitting at because so much stuff is software based nowadays. So I'm sitting at a desk doing software stuff and then driving home and then eating like crap, blah, blah. Anyways. So.
Well, you and I have had similar medical problems because we both drive a lot for our jobs.
Yeah.
Like for me for business, you for job. And then we also we did a lot of jumping over the years. Yeah. And we both end up with piriformis problems.
Well, I have a theory about this as well, is that because all of my colleagues, they don't tend to have, you know, it definitely sucks when you're driving 2 hours one way or plus, or even if over an hour now. But most of the guys I work with, they don't have as much pain going on with like their hips, back and stuff. And I think I don't know. I'm thinking if you are in sports, especially like a jumping one, and then you're going like kind of hot and cold contrast, because I still play a lot of like rec ball and just friends and stuff with friends and stuff, right? So then, you know, weekend warrior, playing tournaments, have league nights, but then all throughout the week I'm just sitting driving, right? And so it's like my muscles are on or off, and then I don't think they like that because there's nothing restorative, there's nothing regenerative going on there. Not doing a lot of stretching because I'm just too I don't know. Anyway, I gotta do better at that. But
I think there's something there too. Like I noticed that I am in worse like physical. I have more ailments than other people my age who didn't play as much as I did.
Yeah, that's
like I think you beat your body up. Right?
I think so. Yeah.
I think this is why a lot of like pro NBA guys, you see them like years later and they're so out of shape because they put their body through it, right? And not to compare like our level of play with NBA guys, but it does take a beating. I have weird issues in my body.
Yeah.
Kind of cropped up over the years. But the cool thing is whenever I get motivated for like if I'm playing somewhere or doing something, even with my kids now my motivation is just to never let my kids beat me. Like, you know, so if I always bug them and I still beat them all the time, and that's the goal. And I tell them like they might beat me if I'm dead. Maybe.
We're getting into the weeds again, man.
We're going off topic, but not really though. It's all connected, right? Because the bottom line is the
hard struggle,
things and
better for you,
self-esteem.
And I can honestly deal with anything at work now, like hands down.
I've seen you get better over the last few years.
At me.
Yeah. I think you've had a lot of growth. But even the fact that you weren't enjoying the job and you were still pushing through it, we talked about that too. Like there is some benefit here, right?
And part of the reason I was able to push through, I think, I can pull from my team.
Was because of
no,
me.
my team
influence.
Background.
Yes.
My experience from sports. That's what I think. It has helped me.
and I helped
I
you.
say so. Okay.
And that's
yeah.
how I helped you.
Did we make our point, or did
yeah, that I'm
are you
I'm a
sure?
kick-ass life coach,
Yeah.
and that these people listening, these 2 or 3 people listening, because they're
Yeah.
related to us, are getting the stuff for free, and I just want them to understand the value here, that the value that I bring. Anyway, okay, so let's get down to the nitty-gritty. So understand that maybe people are this is why people are angry in society all around, right? That self-loathing, I don't like myself and I'm going to lash out. So this is why people who take care of themselves through exercise, through, doing good things for their body and their mind.
If you do a hard workout in the morning,
Yep.
nothing is gonna phase you the rest of the day.
It's true. We all know
You
this,
know?
but
we all, yeah. I am not
I know
a good example because I don't work out. I want to.
Well, we do.
But
I think
sometimes.
we work out more than the average person. Let's be
But right when
honest,
you go
right?
through something brutal and then you fix that machine, you get that workout done, you deal with this problem, and then once that's done, like nothing's gonna phase you after
Yeah.
that. Whatever can happen,
That's true.
right? So,
It gives each day perspective, right? That's why a lot of the popular talk in fitness and business especially is like start your day with something hard, and then no emergency will phase you.
yeah.
I know Mark Zuckerberg started doing a lot of hard stuff in the mornings, he says, so the rest of his day doesn't scare him.
Why does he even work still? Isn't he like a gazillionaire?
Oh, I believe he is a gazillionaire. Yeah, I think that's the technical term. Yes. Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
He does, because if you don't work, then
I mean,
it's not good
people
for you.
assume that if you're successful, that it's easy, and I think the opposite is true, right? Like whether it's an athlete or a business person, it's those people. It's the hardest thing to do what they're doing. People crap on them and criticize them, and I'm not saying that Mark Wahlberg,
Way off.
Mark Wahlberg invented Facebook, right? Right after he was in Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch.
Yeah, and then Zuckerberg
Yeah.
still.
And
Right.
Wahlburgers is owned by Mark Zuckerberg, right? I think I got that.
Uh-huh.
I loved Mark Zuckerberg and with Will Ferrell and the other guys. You ever seen it? Anyway. Yeah. So basically, going back to parents. I mean, I had something here on my list that I could go with, or Eric, if you want to start, you could start. Like, what are some things that maybe parents can do better or need to do better for young athletes if they're raising a volleyball player? Or I could start.
No, for sure I have something. It's how much involvement the parent has in their kid's life in sports. Like, so let me explain that further because it doesn't sound very good.
Please do.
Yeah, so I'll use myself as an example. My parents, they weren't huge volleyball players. My dad was he was into like speed skating and badminton and stuff, and then my mom played volleyball and basketball and stuff, but not at like a high level. But anyways, when I was playing sports, like they just like let me do my own thing, right? And I think that was great. Like my mom usually came to like all my games and stuff. I actually played hockey for like 16 years and ended up getting out of it, which in a way, we'll talk about that as well, because that was an interesting story there. Anyways, I got out of hockey and then into volleyball or whatever. But like when I was playing hockey as a little kid, I would always like look. This is my mom told me this. I don't remember this at all, but she's like, you would always look up and see me in the stands, and then you would. I'm like, sure. I'm like, maybe that's what I remember.
Is that the way your mom talks?
I can't do it. Hopefully she doesn't watch it. She's gonna kill me. But
She won't watch it.
no, she won't. So that was cool. And then, like we'd drive home or whatever. And then, her involvement was the huge amount of like prep and stuff, and like waking me up at like hockey was brutal. Like waking a 8-year-old up at like 4:45 or 5 a.m. Like, holy, like I was not nice to deal with. But anyways, so like she hugely involved, but I meant not involved in the sense of my progression with the sport.
Knew the boundary.
Yeah, she would give feedback. Like sometimes she'd be like, "Oh, you didn't look like you weren't going as fast as you normally do today." She's like, "Looked like you were just like coasting." She'd say stuff like that to me or whatever, right? But nothing, not technical stuff, because she's got nothing to pull from, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, but then and I think that was great. So the same thing in volleyball. It's just I was allowed to just absorb what was in front of me with watching my players and then my coach's instruction. So that was kind of good because I know, and it's probably worse in other sports, parents get too involved, especially with the technical stuff and maybe even like political stuff, like within the team. Like, I don't want you hanging out with like this player or stuff like that, because, you know, when it comes down to getting scholarships and stuff like that, maybe you want to hang out with the better players and not, right? And so I can only imagine stuff like that. I'm lucky in the sense, like I kind of grew up in you knew the coaches I had. You were one of them.
I was the most.
I don't remember that, but
I was the most influential coach you had, actually.
So that was a great thing for me. But then, so what do you think about it? Like,
I think that's crap. No, I think that's absolutely true. There's two things you mentioned: the lack of involvement in terms of technical stuff. I think that, you know, people need to know what they don't know, and just like we talked about with coaches, a lot of parents, you hear them yelling out things, and they shouldn't yell out things. Like, you know, we talked about the coach saying just get it over. Well, it's, you know, 10 times worse, I think, just as bad when the parent yells just get it over, or when they're yelling advice, or, you know, it's nice, you know, sometimes they yell at things and then they ask a question to someone next to them. Maybe they should ask the question before they yell out. And especially when they give advice to the player, when the player is receiving all these technical coaching tips from, you know, the programs the parent pays for. Yeah. So there's that staying out. But then the other thing I liked you mentioned was the preparation of the parent, like, you know, driving you, waking you up, getting you ready, getting your food ready. Yeah. That's something that I think I like to point that out. I think more parents, if this is some good advice for parents, you should point out the preparation. See, that's the only thing a parent should talk about to a kid, really, is preparation. Because if you're a parent who prepares this stuff, and I do, like, I see parents doing like too much for their kids these days, but they do a lot, and the kid is oblivious to it, and it creates an entitled player, right? I always point out to my kids about the amount of work I'm doing to take them to tournaments, the amount of time, you know, their mother does the night before or the morning of. And then, and I asked them, like, you know, we didn't, this came up in the first one too. I don't drive out 3 hours so you guys can just, you know, you know, so you stay out late. You want to go out with your friends the night before, that's fine. But then maybe you shouldn't do the tournament. Maybe you shouldn't play the sport because, you know, we're doing all this prep. How much prep are you doing? Is a good one for parents to, I think, highlight to their kids. Because that's one thing I see parents doing. Like I said, they do it to a fault almost. Too much stuff for their kids, like beach tournaments. Like, you know, today parents will shag volleyballs for kids when they hit indoor and on the beach.
Yeah, that never would happen when I was playing.
Never happened when I played too.
Indoor maybe. They might hang out because usually...
If it goes to them.
We would set up the one team would hit and then we would hit, right? Yes. So we would...
but
volunteer parent in there with the players who are also shagging.
Now it's like, so it's especially bad on the beach, because like if you're playing on a large beach and the ball goes rolling 50 meters away, the parent
goes. It's part of our warm up, man. I got to hit and then chase.
It's training too, and even during the game, like it's just, that was just part of the game, right? Like, you gotta go get your ball if it's in the parking lot or something, right? Sometimes you hit.
You don't want to chase it and just make a cut shot.
Yeah, exactly. yeah. Or I mean, it forced us to hit it down more if we didn't want to go chase the ball, which is kind of good. But no, that's something that parents do a little too much of. But you need to remind your kid of that too. I think that's one thing you could talk about is the amount of prep you're doing. Versus that. Now, if that's yours.
Well, and one big difference between when I was coming up through club ball is that there's no smartphones.
Yes.
The Razor maybe just came out at the end of my club, right? Yeah. So I can imagine if it was around at that time, there probably would have, you know, because YouTube, now we start thinking about YouTube, there would have been more access to stuff like that. So now, you know, fast forward to current day, there is YouTube and all that stuff. So what do you think? Parents can do good research, and then they could give some input to their kid, or they could look at stuff. I mean, there's got to be no harm in watching pro players.
Yeah, that's the thing I was gonna say. Like, because it's so easy for anybody to make content. Then what happens is the new skill becomes the ability to discern between among the content makers. Yeah, and that's something they don't know. There is good stuff out there, but there's a lot of bad stuff.
There's a lot of bad
stuff.
And
I would submit, just like in life, the bad stuff. There's way more bad stuff than good stuff, right? There's a 90% chunk of crap, and there's like 10 or 5% great. And you know, I think we all know where we are in that. right? But the idea is that you want to listen to people who have credibility and make logical sense and have done it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but if you haven't been up at a high level and where the ball is going, where the play is fast, it's very difficult to, unless maybe you've coached at that level for a while. There are those coaches who have been there, but I still think they don't, anyway, I don't want to focus on coaches too much, but the parent, I think the parent should expose the kid. You're right. To I think the best thing a parent can do is help the kid watch good level volleyball, not necessarily because again they don't have the experience.
Maybe that's it. Maybe you can sit down and just because there's got to be a ton of parents that are really excited, happy for the kid that they find a sport they love and they want to help and What advice would you give them? And that's what, I think sitting down and watching some high level ball would be great.
If the kid wants to. That's the other thing too. You can't force it, and you can't make someone want it. Even so, going back to my daughter, right?
I can't help in this department. I don't have kids,
exactly. This is where it's tricky. Yeah, you do.
And I imagine myself at that age, I didn't want to hang out with.
Yeah.
Mind you, before when I was playing beach when I was 16, we used to watch AVP stuff.
Yep.
The night before, get all amped up.
Yeah, 100%.
But that wasn't. That was me and my beach partner coming to that on our own, not our parents.
Yeah. No. And same with me. We watched AVP and Karch Karai days and all that stuff, and indoor as well. But I think that the big thing is that the best thing a parent can do is understand what their kid wants to. So I'll just give you the example. So talking about my daughter, she's not sure she wants to try it for varsity, right? She played a lifetime of volleyball, a lifetime of beach, decent player, has a lot of assets, obviously has some weaknesses like we all do, and she's not sure if she wants to. And I said, well, that's you got to decide. I think that if you don't try things, that's the only thing I want you to take from this is trying something. If you don't want to do it and you can't picture yourself doing it, that's fine. I think you should go through the process of the uncomfortable process of tryouts.
The struggle.
The struggle. Yeah. If she likes it at all. And so I think she's seeing now that she's probably going to walk in and try out or be willing to redshirt or whatever if the team is full. And I hope she does if she wants to. But the second it becomes, work.
Too,
I mean, I went through that. In my first year, I wanted to quit volleyball by Christmas. We talked about that. There's not burnout, but just lack of confidence. It's it was 4 or 5 days a week plus tournaments.
It's intense, yeah.
It's intense, yeah, and it's not for everybody.
And you're at the bottom of the totem pole, man.
Yeah, when I was especially. I told that story before. I was 17. Everybody else was 19 back then. When I played, everybody was 19 in first year, right? Because we had OAC and grade 13 OAC was the grade 13 terminology. And so I came out, I was already a year younger than my graduating class, and I left high school a year early. In case you missed it, last episode, it was disclosed I was a bit of a child prodigy genius, I guess, is the terminology we would use. And that we also, what words you're gonna use. Yeah, we also established that I don't like to talk about it, but that's a reality that I had to live with. But anyway, So knowing when you're talking about watching with kids or I would recommend that parents, if you want, expose your kid to a lot of high level volleyball on YouTube. I think that playing games.
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
I think the instruction thing is tricky because you might, I've seen I've had staff that we work with, our own coaches who I've had to sort of say, that video doesn't make sense and here's why. And, and it goes, we talked about this too, it goes viral. So I would recommend that parents just let their kids, I don't know why more parents don't do that actually, expose them to game footage. We talked about that before too. Because then they get to see some real, I think young players, if they watched high level players play, they would see how many errors are made at that high level and how nobody cares. One of my favorite stories was when I told you 2 national teams were playing, and it was a 5-set match. And in the 4th set, the team that was up 3-1 had an opportunity to win it. It was their serve, and the player
3-1.
2-1.
Okay. Child prodigy.
They're finding out that I'm not good at math. Edit. No, but they were up 2-1. I knew I was going to mess that up. You did that in the last episode about a score. Remember you said 25. We were up 25. Yeah. So there you go. Anyway, that's why I did it. So
that
you wouldn't
just
feel
proves
bad.
I'm actually listening to you.
I did that. Yeah, that's. But I also did it so you wouldn't feel bad.
Right.
Remember, I'm your guru. So No, but this team was up 2-1, fourth set, and they have a chance to win. I think it's like 24-23, right? Guy goes back to serve, tosses up the huge toss, spin serve right into the middle of the net. Coach doesn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
Everybody's high-fiving. Comes back. They lose that set. So that guy had the ball in his hand to win it. They lose that set, and they lose the fifth. Nobody goes back to that player and says, if you got that serve over, your team would have won.
Yeah.
Because that's the wrong mentality. You don't want anybody at that baseline thinking like that, right? And I think that players, if they watch that high-level stuff, they'll see these things, that these great players make these huge mistakes in critical moments, but they only made the mistake because they were going for it, right? And that you need to go for it. And that ties into my first real point, really, where I think playing time is an issue that is the number one thing. I think every coach can agree that they are tired of hearing from parents about playing time. And we covered this before. Coaches at any junior level should be playing players as much as possible. I don't care. You could go first set, top lineup, second set, little weaker lineup, third set, go for it with your top six. That's how it should be, right? And even balance those first two lines if you want, or you could have a really strong one. I always find it's tricky when they when coaches give the bench an opportunity to play, but then they don't understand that means that you have your backup setter setting a hitter who might be better with the first, your starting setter. That's another one I find, or or maybe the defenders aren't. Maybe there's not a great passer, so your backup setter is your backup setter because you think they're not a good setter, but really maybe they're not getting a chance to play with the best passers. You know what I mean? There's so many things that can dictate, whether or not a player is really the A or the B player. But anyway, the idea there is that if you, as a parent, when your kid is not getting fair playing time, there is something amazing in that. There is something very empowering in that. And I always tell parents this too. This happened to my daughter. She felt that she was unjustly not playing, and I said, "That's fine. So what can you do?" And the answer is, "Well, I could work harder in my spare time." Yeah. And if you feel it's unfair right now, what's the beauty of that? In every practice and every time you do get in the game, what can you do?
Yeah, because if you're not going to get played, then green light.
Yeah, the fear is gone. So now I said, so the beauty, you get to go in there. If your coach isn't noticing you anyway, swing. If the set's there, hammer it. If you're going back to the baseline, you got good form, toss up your serve, go. I mean, because I also tell this to parents too. If you feel that the coach is irrational, then why are you trying to please or reason with an irrational coach?
Yeah.
You're actually teaching your kid to waste their time complaining, right? Because let's face it, if you think the coach is nuts, let's say, then why are you trying to reason with a crazy person? If you think the coach is unfair or against your child, why are you trying to reason with them? The only thing you can control is you in that moment, and you need to tell your kid to go for it, play free, play loose. And you know what happened? So my daughter, just to sum up that story, she started hammering her spin serve. And I said to her at the end of the season, I said, "See, so that could have been a wasted season if you sat there on the bench and we were all upset and grumpy, and and we were, but that's okay. But you learned how to play free, and that's a gift. I know as a player myself, my own life, when I was at my worst, I was nervous, uptight, and then when I got the confidence to just wail, and I learned people, when people were starting to say, "Hey, you're a really good hitter, or your serve is awesome." Yeah. Then that became okay, now I learned I just got to go for it. And you never dominate unless you go for it. And she had moments like that. And that was great. And the coach still didn't come around because, coaches get locked into their thing. But as a parent, what you can do is you can harness your kid's anger, resentment, and your own, and tell them this is a gift. You have nothing to lose. Those are the best 3 words in sports, I think, are nothing to lose. And in all of the history of sport, no matter what the sport, the team with nothing to lose can surprise a lot of people. So can the player. Yeah. Yeah.
I just keep agreeing with it because I didn't even remember this until now, but the one of the varsity programs I was at that was really good. That's the situation I was in. I was a rookie, so I knew I wasn't going to be playing a lot because our team was just amazing anyways. Mm-hmm. And I was a middle all through club. I think I had a little bit of outside experience. I got recruited as a left side, right side. So
this is the big problem. That's a whole other
That's a
problem.
whole other
That's a whole
problem.
other show we're gonna do
Yeah,
for middles. Yeah.
But the great thing was that in practice, because there was no pressure on me. I knew I wasn't gonna be playing a lot. I actually ended up playing probably like 30-40% of the season, anyways.
Of course you did. That's why you're here.
Well, yeah. But that's what it was. I just had a little bit of a flashback there. Is that in practice I just gotta like do my thing, and it was sweet.
Yeah. I think in any walk of life, no matter what we're doing, I think anybody can relate to that. The times where they, said, "I don't give a shit."
Yeah.
There's some. I mean, that's the subtle art of not giving a. The famous book, right? That's sort of what they're getting at. There is, there's freedom in not caring as much about things, and that's sort of what I wanted to instill. I think parents can do a lot of that with their kids when they're stuck in that situation. Consider it as that bit of that green light thing that we talked about, where you think it's a red light, but it's actually very empowering and liberating and freeing to not have to worry about that. Because I noticed, so when my daughter was getting more playing time earlier in the season, she played very cautious, right? And I'd be like, same thing. This is good advice, by the way, as we're coming up to tryouts for kids. I always tell people this, like, do you want to stand out or do you want to look like everybody else? Right? Coaches will not notice you if you're just playing to not mess up, because everybody's playing to not mess up. Coaches will notice you if you demand that they notice you, and if you do extraordinary things, right? I love the word extraordinary, because there's ordinary and then there's extraordinary, and everybody's working so hard to be ordinary, but they should really try to be different, stand out. And players, I see it all the time. Like, that's when we went to that camp, that post-secondary ID camp. The coach was telling players, we don't want safe serving. We don't want.
These are a bunch of good coaches.
These were high-level coaches. Both.
They're all players, weren't they?
High-level players who became high-level coaches. They all had like national team experience in this country.
Kind of made it past that shit filter, I guess.
Yeah, they were trying to pass on to kids that mistakes happen, so forget that garbage, forget that fear of messing up garbage, play loose, play free, and be aggressive. So just good advice for parents and players, but parents especially: tell your kids to be extraordinary, tell your kids to stand out. The only way you do that is to go for it. And good form. Like, you can't be out there you can't be out there wailing away like a crazy person, right, facing the wrong way.
And you can't go play beach, because you're gonna play. Go find a friend and go play beach.
There are so many coaches,
right?
Eric, I don't know if you know this, but there are so many indoor coaches who tell their athletes not to play beach because you're going to pick up bad habits. Well, you know what bad habits you pick up on the beach? You pass every play.
You don't tell your coach that you went to play beach. I don't know.
No. I mean, I don't know if they forbid it, but I don't understand it. Like, so, and this is the solution, by the way. You mentioned the middle thing, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned the middle problem that you had, like you played middle in club because you were tall.
My left side approach, I had no left side approach. So the first half of the season was literally just like, what am I doing? But it was amazing. It was amazing how quickly I improved.
Yeah, and that's why those middles and you did play beach. So
I did play beach.
Middles who don't get to pass. Yeah. And then the post-secondary institution says, oh, you're too short to be a middle here. You're a left side.
I think that's where I got recruited. Now that I think
from the beach?
It. Yeah.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Outside hitter, obviously.
I don't actually know, but now that I'm thinking about it, because the senior guys on the team, they were all on the beach tour as well.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I was playing, was it 17U or 16U beach? They would have been all on the 24U. Yeah. I don't know, but yeah.
But either way, the beach is what saved you, because you got to pass. Like, middles don't get to pass. Middles don't get to hit outside or work on a long approach. Yeah. That huge backswing that you need to pound a ball. Middles sometimes don't even do a backswing because there's no time. Yeah.
I had a really, I definitely had the middle swing because exactly. And then a lot of the times I even got bumped up in club, right? So then that was great for practices because I get to play with these guys that are better than me. But then when it came to playing in the tournaments, I knew I was going to be playing. Or actually, I can't even remember. I think I did play a few tournaments with them, but I obviously didn't see much court time, right? But I was there. The privilege was the practice, right?
Yeah. Well, in high school, we moved you up. Like Like I had you and another player on our
That's
team,
where I played
Stu.
a lot for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were
We played
great.
a lot
We would have
there.
won the gold medal, no problem.
Yeah,
so
but-
I gave.
right.
I was a young coach. I was still playing a lot then,
Yeah.
and I said, "No, you guys go play senior because I don't need a medal.
Yeah.
I need you guys to have competition that's going to push you." And we did that. And at the time, that was like,
The senior team was good too.
yeah, I kind of happy about my because I was a young coach, and I just was a no brainer to me. Like, but if you're a lot of other coaches that I've worked
That's
with,
interesting, eh?
yeah. Well, I mean, I had that mindset back then, right? Like, I don't need a gold medal as a high school coach. I just need you guys to go win them, go push yourselves. Not, because if you and Stu stayed back, we would have probably won OFSA, like the whole provincial title or championship, right? That year we had a great.
There's some teams in Whitby that are really good, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
Did they move those guys up? The guys from.
What do you think?
I don't think they did.
They played.
I don't think
They
they did.
played for the.
Yeah.
I know, like some of these coaches, I know them. These guys that want their gold medal, they don't care about the kid. They don't care about the kid. I mean, I have that funny regional story just to go back. I mean, parents just to comfort parents here, because a lot of parents feel that they're the crazy ones, and they're not. Because I mean, this story I think sums it up. I was coaching a regional team, which is kind of like a larger, I guess, a district team that you might call in another country or something. But I was away. I think I was playing a men's twos tournament, a beach tournament somewhere, and on like a pro tour. So the coach that was there selected both teams for me. He had the camp because I was away, right? And the coach that did that always would take the older team and leave the younger team would always take the younger team and give the older team to someone else. In this case, the younger team was really good. I don't know if you were on it. Maybe you're on the younger team. I don't know. And what he did that was so brutal was this time he took the younger team, not the older team.
He took the stack team. I know.
He took the stack team.
Yeah.
And worse than that, he sent up two very raw young players on my team, because I wasn't there to do the selection.
Just to fit his roster.
Just to
balance it.
To make he wanted to give more playing time to better players, so he sent up kids that were too young to get decimated at the older age group with me. So when I came back, I coached them, and we were like we had a weird setup. We were like, we ended up having to put a lefty superstar right side player into the middle a little bit as a lefty, which is very weird, but we had to, because to protect the kids he sent up to play middle with us, like I had to limit their playing time because they're getting hit in the face and bullied around. And that guy, I met that player years later. He came up to me and thanked me for working with him so much. And he said, but he never forgot what that coach did to him, and he quit volleyball after that.
Yeah.
Because that coach ruined his confidence, sent him up, and he knew that he was getting screwed over. His parents noticed it too.
Yeah.
But that coach wanted to win a gold medal, took a team that he normally wouldn't take, sent up the young players he should have been developing.
Yeah, kid knows what's going on, man.
Well,
like,
they do, and a lot of parents do too, and they get labeled. So now there are crazy parents too, though. We have to be careful with that. There are parents who are toxic and they are delusional. And again, but those are the ones that tie in with what we were talking about off the top about insecurity, self-loathing, and that's on them. And I feel bad when coaches get placed in that situation. I have, though, I'll be honest with you, I have faced some parents who have come to me and talked to me about winning now instead of like, oh, you guys are losing. Like, I remember a very, very well-educated, articulate parent came to me and was like, how long will you stick with the system? Like, if they're losing nonstop. And I said, well, they're 13. And my goal is to make sure that they, but he said, will you lose every game of the season? And I said,
your entire system, or was he talking about passing?
He was talking about our system where, like, the kids were not, they were losing a lot of games at the start of the season because we were being meticulous about not thinking short term, trying to get wins. We were very, lack of a better term, religious about the system. Because I wanted them to understand where they need to be. So they were, if a player bumps over a free ball surprisingly on two, a team that's working on fundamentals might not be ready for that.
Yeah.
Because they're too busy focusing on being in the right position, and they're a little slow to react, right? So I said, well, I mean, you lose for as long as it takes, because they will get it. You just have to be, as a parent, patient in watching this, right? And sure enough, throughout, a couple weeks later, they beat teams that they were losing to.
Well, it sounds like the parent didn't understand the strategy of that system that you were using, right? Because like
not only that, they didn't understand process.
Like they're just looking at results.
No, but that's not. No. Yeah, it's not. So this isn't about if a parent understands what you're doing. This is about if a parent understands life.
Yeah. It's right because you want to see this strategy work, and so you have to put the time and the legwork to get to that point. Yeah.
So this is what I told them.
Use it for a few months. Oh, you're not winning. Let's switch it up. So let's teach the kids something new right away and just confuse them all over again.
Yeah, it's one thing. It's one thing if you're like an established player tweaking systems, right? That's different. This is a fundamental building block. Right?
Yeah.
So it's a universal law of nature. Again, to go back to we have a philosophy bent here, right? Everything needs a foundation from which to go. Like a coach later, if I meet a coach, if I work with a coach in the pros and they're like, oh, I like this system or I like this strategy. I'm like, that's cool. Yeah. Cause everybody knows what we're riffing off of. Everybody knows.
Yes.
It's kind of like, in ballet, you learn ballet first before you learn other forms of dance because it's foundational. You learn, you might learn classical before you learn other things because it's foundational.
Yeah.
A lot of hockey players are doing figure skating now because there's foundational stuff there, right, that you build on. So you don't mess with the foundational stuff. And so whenever a parent starts messing with or worrying about results early on, parents, please understand process, okay? Process over results is very, very important because anybody can win at the young ages doing the wrong thing. Anybody can win at a young age doing the wrong thing. The goal, though, is to get players to do the right thing so when they're older, then they can succeed at the highest level, right? At Classic, we talked about this last episode too. The players on the beach, who just bump it over on one.
Yeah.
At 13-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and and the parents are cheering, and the parents don't understand that every time the player does that, they're robbing themselves and their partner of a repetition. Right? Think about that. Every time that player bumps it over on one to get a point, they are robbing. And if you do it 100 times, 200 times in a season, you are robbing your teammate and yourself of a rep, of a pass, a set, and a hit, a roll. It's an interesting thing, right? Whereas the other teams that are losing that way will destroy you that season or the next season because they're getting all those reps and you're not. It's process, not result, and it's a universal law of nature.
And then the creativity comes after.
Yes, creativity comes after. So that's why I have no problem now. I mean, I used to. We were old school beach players, but now I have no problem seeing a high level beach player. They
volley over on two,
or volley over on two, or bump over on one. If there's if that team is leaving, and I even said that to my daughters. I said
those people are so stuck in the system, the opponent, that they're like, oh no, they don't even realize they left a huge alley.
Yeah, and now it's like cutthroat. Like you're out here, you gotta beat people.
I sent you that Karambula clip, right? Clip.
Yes. Oh, he's so clever. Yeah.
But like the
well, who is Karambula? Tell a lot of people.
Italian beach volleyball player, but notably he's a small beach volleyball player, right? He's if you've ever seen some crazy spin serves on your Instagram, Skyball. Yeah. Spinning.
Spinning.
Yeah, that's probably Karambula. He's there's probably more people doing it now though.
But he is the best at it. Like he is
definitely
recognized.
But in the plays they were running, him and his beach partner, I don't know who he's playing with this past season, but like they're doing a lot of really creative stuff only because their ball control skill is amazing, right? And so they're really able to mess with their opponents or whatever. But
then they're small, their fundamentals are super strong too, so they have great control of the passing, like you said, but they're small, so they got to do tricky stuff and fast stuff.
I think his partner is bigger than him anyways. Like was like a 5'11" guy maybe.
Yeah, but they serve him a lot because
they serve him.
That's the beauty of beach. You can control the rallies unless the other team's gonna do some funky stuff.
Yeah,
setting on two and all that.
Actually, in a lot of those clips, he wasn't getting served.
That's because he's so crafty. Like he's earned it now, where they know that it's tough to. Like, that's the other thing too about like if we talk about we go back to tall, right? Like we'll do an episode on tall versus short.
Yeah.
A lot of times on the beach, short players don't get served because they're too crafty.
Yeah.
Right? They can crank. and they're too crafty.
Well, their hitting technique is so good because they've been.
Yes.
It has to be.
Yep.
Right.
And their
It has to be
passing is
immaculate.
so sure, or their, you
Yeah.
know, there's all sorts of things on the beach we'll talk about, but
Yeah.
So parents, I think that's a big first point about the idea of understanding process, thinking long term, and, you know, patience, all of those things. Do you have something on your list, Eric? Maybe we'll go back and talk about, or stories or anything else that you want to talk about on your list.
Yeah, I guess. Earlier we were talking about like involvement and stuff, and you know, it was awesome for me how my parents didn't get too involved in my development of the sport, which is great. Like, again, they did all the work. They like got me there,
But like telling you what to do, and
they didn't. They just, you know, general feedback. It was just like, oh, it looks like you didn't have a good game and stuff like that. Like, oh, what was, like, were you okay? Or like, you know, like, or, you know, I was like a bit of a dopey 16-year-old, right? So
I remember.
she would even kind of like chirp me a little bit, right? And be like, hey, like, what's going on here? You're not trying, you're just coasting or whatever. And so
That doesn't sound like your mother.
fingers will kill you, man.
She's no, but it's a good thing. Like, she does push you.
That's mostly what I remember was the kind of pushing like that. And so again, she's not telling me, oh, do this or whatever. Like,
Right.
she knew that the coaches I was with were great, and she's like, let them go, right?
Yeah.
And then I remember a lot of my own development was I model it off of people I was around. So if I saw a good player doing something that was effective, I was like, you know, you just watch and learn, right? And again, that's this whole. It's a built-in human mechanism, right? We can model our own, we can model from other players, right? So that's, if you can get your kid to watch pro, like, high-level sports,
or local varsity too,
or
can
local
be good.
varsity, and so that was most of my progression, because there's, well, even one of my coaches, great coach, he was mostly a baseball guy, right?
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
but he was a great coach, and he knew, and the reason why he was one of the best coaches in my memory is just, it was the motivation. It wasn't that he taught me to have an amazing forearm pass, or he didn't teach me to have an amazing spike and stuff like that. No, it's just the motivation he gave me, because, and then now as a mental aspect, that is foundational, right? Because I kind of kept that drive. And I actually remember becoming a really good blocker, because he just, drove me to, like, always just keep going, just go. Like, you know, I'd be late getting outside,
I remember,
and I'm like, I'm late. And he's like, you'll get there. Like, he's like, just go, right? Just keep going, just push me. And then I think I'm a pretty decent blocker. And then that went into the beach. And then anyways, it's, so that was a huge thing. But it was, so what I'm trying to say is, it was nice that my parents got me there, let me do it, let me play the sport, and didn't get too involved. And but I think they were there ready to get involved if they needed to be, because there is an incident when I was saying I played hockey for 16 years, and I quit. No, it wasn't. Could have been 16. I think it was like maybe 15 years. I think I was done in about grade 10 or grade 11, and basically I decided to be done with it because I ended up getting bullied. And I was trying to say that I needed my parents' involvement, but I didn't. But they would have been there for me had I have needed them, right?
Because you didn't talk about it.
Yeah, I didn't. Well, I didn't feel it was necessary, because
Kids back then didn't, right?
Yeah.
It was kind of like you felt guilty or weak.
And luckily enough, I was able to get through it, because I think I had, you know, good friends. Like, and I had, you know.
Did you tell friends too?
Um,
Probably. I see. Back then, people didn't talk about this stuff, right?
I definitely didn't tell anyone I was playing hockey with. I definitely
Right.
didn't tell them that. And I don't think I told my friends.
No,
I honestly don't think I did.
It wasn't an open.
I think it
culture
was like,
back
okay,
then, yeah.
this just happened. You know, there was two kids in hockey. They're bullying me or whatever, physical, whatever, blah, blah. And then I think what it was in my mind, it's like, this is a negative experience. Therefore, I'm going to just go away from it. And then whenever I would play volleyball, I was into snowboarding. Those two things, I would just have a blast. Those are my 3 winter sports. And it's like, this is fun. That thing is a negative experience, so I'm going to put it over here. These get more attention. And then I think when it came around the next year to decide what sports I'm going to play, to re-enroll or sign up, I guess.
Yeah.
I was just like, hey guys, like, mom and dad, I don't want to play hockey this year. And they were just like, okay, you don't want to play hockey?
Do you think they had a sense of what was going on a little bit?
Because I told my mom at some point, like she knows it did happen.
But I mean, like, do you parents know, like they can tell that something's like.
I think she knew
Your joy was gone, obviously.
Yeah, I think she knew that the coach was kind of crazy, and it was the coach's son who was one of the bullies, and then his good buddy.
Interesting.
Yeah, they actually went to school as well, high school with me. They were a year older, so I ran into them and stuff. But,
Wow.
I think and so
I had a bully too when I was in elementary school. I mean, like it was it's one of those things that, you don't talk about it much, and you don't like back then it wasn't talked about. I mean, you could argue that today it's talked about, but it's not really dealt with. Like, when people put on a pink t-shirt and they think that it's all that they're handling it or they're helping it. I think we live in a culture of bullying, like we still praise strong over weak everywhere, that no matter, even if you talk about it in schools, and, at the end of the day, you go watch, superhero movie where the superhero kicks the crap out of someone and we're all cheering.
Yeah.
So it's another cultural thing in our world where we don't stop and look at the deeper.
And did you talk about it, do you think? Like,
I don't know. I just know it's sometimes, like, I might have come home, like I was in grade 1 and I remember, like, it was a kid. And what's funny though? I started like beating up other kids. Like, it was the classic.
Damn.
Like, it was like there was one kid that was older than me that would like beat me up on my way to school once in a while. And then I remember in grade 1, I would, like, just my childhood memories, I would get in fights. I'd beat up other kids. I didn't want to fight. It was just the classic displacement of, like, I feel weak, so I need to go make myself feel strong. And by the way, that ties in with this topic too, about, like we talked about before, if a parent isn't happy or isn't liking themselves, or liking their life, they will transfer that onto a coach, another player on the team. That happens too, right? Where parents are like talking about other little kids, and I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's what it seemed like. Why I got bullied? Like, this guy's.
And even the toxic player on these teams that we all hate. Like, we all, like, there's toxic players on teams that are just walking around and so rude to other players, but they are themselves damaged goods, and it's tricky because you don't want to. Their freedom to, grieve and feel bad. Like, they are victims themselves for sure.
Right.
But their freedom to, medicate by hurting other people. That's where the line has to stop.
It's a really tough situation, man. Because
it really, like, if you really deep dive into bullying behavior, whether it's a parent, a coach, a player, students, anywhere, you'll find that this is why I hate the superficiality of our society. Like, in terms of, like, I was a teacher for a long time, and every Wednesday was anti-bullying, let's wear pink day. And it sounds great on the surface, but two things happen. One, by wearing the pink, you numb everybody to the, over the year, everybody's like, oh, I got to wear pink, and it doesn't mean anything to them. And two, you absolve yourself of real hard work because you feel you're doing something by wearing this color. So you are really just
the community does, man.
Yeah, because I mean, everybody feels like they're doing enough by wearing that color, when really, and I used to talk about this in my history and philosophy classes a lot, and the psych class, of course. The real hard work and real hard discussion is this. So when your country has a war, there's a war going on, and you're a very wealthy country, and you go bomb the heck out of some poor country, and you're having a parade for everybody, it's an interesting thing because that's a culture of strong beating up on weak, hockey fights, sporting fights, boxing match. And I love these sports, but we praise strong over weak at every turn. So when a young, insecure person wants to show themselves to be strong, they're going to do it by beating up on someone weaker than them, because that's what our culture is telling them to do.
Yeah, they're modeling it.
Yeah, but that's a tricky discussion. So let's just put on a pink t-shirt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it gets to a whole bunch of other things about wealth and who's rich versus poor, and our economy is set up that way, isn't it? Look who we glorify, right?
Yeah.
The wealthiest, most powerful people, we worship them, right?
Does it also end up making us kind of just like put a bad rep or to those people who are, this kid's a bully, maybe their parents made them like this, now they're just a bad person, and now it's like, now they're like,
we don't have to show them sympathy either.
And that's because like, what about the situation where
Good
you
guy,
know,
bad guy. Our culture loves good guy, bad
no,
guy.
like how good is it for, well, what do you think of this? Like if, cause this happened, right? Club or high school, we had a guy who, clearly was raised in a family of abuse, but how, I don't know, like maybe it was really good for him to be out there on the court with us, and he would show up. Even in high school, we had to get there for like 6:30 or 6 a.m. No, it's probably 6:30, something like that. And, and he was there with us, and then we would, do the physical crazy warm up, the stairs, the circuits, and the practice. And then in those moments, I mean, he was a pretty great guy, right? And so,
not all kids that get bullied go that route, right? Like there are different variations of it. Like a lot of kids who get bullied become the most sympathetic people, and they understand that they can't pass it on.
Like
and I think there's a genetic thing that flips that switch.
Right.
And I think he was definitely a guy who he did have his anger.
He had his blowouts, but
and
I always had a great. I feel like I had a good friendship with him,
Same
right?
with me, yeah.
And I know he was going through stuff, and I couldn't do much.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have been, because he was older than me anyway. So he had a bit of his own pride thing that he would never ask me for help or whatever. But I think just being able to be there and play sports with us was probably a good thing for him, right?
Oh yeah, sports are a great escape for us, and that's the other thing that ties in with here too. Like parents have to remind themselves, like, this is supposed to be joyful. This is supposed to be fun. The minute you make it like work or a task for your kid, they're gonna want to quit. And if you like I said, as much as I understand the coaching toxicity that's dominant, I think, in the game, or becoming more and more common, for the same reasons, right? The same insecure coaching is causing the same problem that's causing the insecure parenting. I think the parents really can do themselves some favor by pulling back and letting things unfold a bit. Like, our instinct, I think, in a high tech, fast paced smartphone culture, is to intervene and fix things so fast. Like, we can't stand 5 seconds of discomfort, and this ties in with a lot of things we talked about already. And we like to intervene when really we need to let things flow a bit. We need to let things go, and sometimes they go to great places, and we don't let that great place happen because we're too busy fixing the short-term crap. So I think that would be another good piece of advice for a parent. Just sit back, breathe. It's not your journey happening right now, right? It's your kid's journey. And I used to say this to my wife a lot too, whenever our kids experience some sort of bullying in elementary school. I remember, like, if there was some teasing or even racism or anything, I said, well, listen, would you rather that your kid went through this when they're young? Or would you rather that the first time they encountered something like this was in their 20s in an office building or in some other living away from home?
Yeah.
There is real value in having something bad happen to your kid or tough at an early age, right? It's like a callus for their mind, right? Like, it strengthens. And then she said, yeah, I guess I never thought of it like that. Like, it's better to have it happen early so they are aware that this stuff happens, and then the next time they encounter it. But we're so busy, so this is like another thing I really need to talk about in this episode. That's because I operate another volleyball organization, and we see parents always seeking to protect their child from usually a lot of times irrational fears, right? So like the big thing for us is like we run a lot of youth programs, and kids come in first time, they're very nervous, and the parents walking into the gym and they're like terrified that their kid doesn't know anybody. And then after 15 minutes they come out and they're like, he's very uncomfortable. Can we pull him out?
Laugh.
It's legit for this kid, right? And for the parent. But I know what's making you laugh is the idea that where I'm going with this.
I'm laughing at how it's just ridiculous.
Well, you're laughing at how where, like, you've heard me say this to you before too. So like that, after 10 minutes they want to leave because they're not comfortable. And I tell the parent, like, we have no problem giving you a refund. Don't worry about it. But just as an athlete, I will tell you that, in a day that kid is going to be having a blast 2 times from now, or 2 days from now, or 15 minutes from now. But parents make the mistake of making a kid's irrational fears rational. You need to show as the
You're
adult.
reinforcing
You're
it now,
reinforcing,
right?
and you're teaching them, like, oh
Yeesh.
man, like when that parent's leaving, all I see is, you're right, it is scary in there. Let's run for it.
Yeah.
When really what they need to be saying is, you know what? I know it's uncomfortable, but I can assure you that by doing this, you're going to have a blast. And, that happens to the kids that stay. There are parents who leave their kids, and it's awesome, and they let their kid go, and the kid's terrified. The kid wants to leave, and the parent says, no, we signed up. You're going to do this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the next week, too, the kid's dying to run to the gym, Soccer. I remember our kids playing soccer. Female young player crying on the field. Mom goes out, holds the kid's hand the whole soccer game. The kid wants to quit. And I'm like, so you're just teaching that kid that it's not going to work unless you're... And then they quit. They quit after a game or two,
So what is it good advice to get your kid into sports as soon as possible, or not necessarily on like an organized team, but maybe just like go teach them how to skate or something as soon as possible? Because I mean, you're going to fall down just doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like whether it's a rational fear of not making friends or a rational fear of falling down while you're skating, or...
Yeah. I mean, I think the lesson really is to be okay with, no matter what your kid's doing, be okay with them not, let them go through the fear.
Yeah.
And you want to talk about anxiety, which is legit, but parents might be to blame for a lot of this anxiety. Because if kids are learning at young ages that their irrational fears are real, and again, remember, I just want to tell people, I was a counselor for a lot of years, psychology teacher for a long time. So
I was not.
Yeah, Eric was not. That's why he's just sitting there listening. No, but and just even being in the classroom and counseling a lot, you do see this issue happen a lot where, parents were grateful when you tell them, sometimes you just got to let your kid suffer. And they're like, but it's so hard to do. And it is hard to do, but I always tell them too, it's the only way to teach someone anything. Like, you can't, like, we talk about this quite a bit, right? Where you can tell someone over and over again something, but until they go through it themselves, they don't really believe it.
Totally.
And they don't really live it, so like,
Totally.
so, I kind of laugh at self-help books sometimes because they can be tricky. Like we're going to have a few instructional things for parents and players, but they're written with a philosophical bent that are going to be coming through in these universal laws, sort of ideas. But you have to live things to really believe them, and you have to experience things. And bravery and fighting through anxiety and stress, same thing. You got to fight through it. So parents, I would say let your kids be uncomfortable and relish in the fact that they're not relish, but let them wallow. That's sort of it. Let them wallow.
Yeah.
Good things come when kids have their backs up against the wall or through struggle, right? Because you want to callous them. You want them to understand there is a big part of this where the world can be unfair and this isn't forever. And if you couple that message with, hey, now you have that green light we talked about earlier to go do some things freely on the court and in practice, wail away.
And
Be aggressive.
This doesn't go away. Like this is literally something I'm implementing right now, current day, with my job. Like there's so I'm technically a junior tech, right? Like I'm 4 years in, and I have another guy who works with me. He's coming up on 2 years, and he's actually a year older than me. So I'm 35, he's 36, and we have our senior tech, right?
Right.
And he's noticed, our senior tech, he's like, I noticed you guys have two different ways of going about stuff. He's like, the other guy calls me all the time whenever he has any little issue, right? He just calls him about everything, right? And then he's like, you though, you'll just you'll get into some situation, and he's like, you'll only call me if it's like really bad or you tried something and you screwed it up, right? So what I ended up doing is, because I don't want to call him right away, right? Like I noticed that in myself for the first 2 years. I was like, okay, I got to stop calling him. Like I want to like try and figure this out on my own, right? And the good thing about it is that I actually learned, because now all of that pressure is on me. The troubleshooting is all done on me. The bad thing about it is that I end up getting into some shitty situations, right? But again, that shitty situation is all on me, and so I actually end up learning quicker, right? So it's kind of accelerated my learning. It's made for a lot of uncomfortable situations and stuff, but it's also made me like, like I was saying earlier, I can like deal with anything at work now, right?
Right.
But yeah, I think that's just an example of kind of what you're talking about here,
Yeah,
right? Like,
no, yeah, it's I mean, and even the qualities that you're showing about, you know, you don't want to call so much, you want to be independent. That's also, you know, something that's come from sports and fighting through tough moments and being allowed to handle it, right? Like your parents, you said, weren't over involved.
well,
If your parents came running to rescue you every 2 seconds, I guarantee you'd be calling the boss every 2 seconds, right?
right. And this guy, my senior tech, like I actually like I rely on him because the guy is way better at doing the job than me, and I don't want to keep calling in prematurely because when I have a real issue or if I need some real help or something, I want to have a good reputation with him, right? And I think if I'm just kind of calling in all the time, I don't know what that's going to do, but it's kind of look like this guy's kind of soft, like or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, there's
He's also busy on his own time. He's fixing machines elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
So
I was gonna say that's empathy, really, right? Like,
right.
maybe you're
wanna
worried about
keep-
his time,
Yeah.
and you're worried about even his perception of you is a form of empathy because you want to make sure that he doesn't think that you're incompetent and needy.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
No, it's a form of empathy because you're very mindful of his thoughts and his opinions and his views. Whereas
Right.
someone without empathy tends to only focus on themselves, right? And empathy, let's think like selflessness is the opposite of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are really, you know, I mean, there is some stuff written about this too, where you know, anxiety is really a self-obsession, right? Anxiety is a form of self-obsession.
I've heard that before. Yeah. And
Yeah,
like
you're overly.
shyness is as well, kind of.
Well, you're overly. So let's look at what anxiety
Again, I'm not a
is.
psychologist.
Yeah, well, some of the in psychology, when you're talking about someone who's dealing with anxiety, you know, there's a little, you know, they're worried that everybody's looking at them. They're worried about what everybody's thinking about
Yeah.
them. And the reality is nobody's thinking about you. The reality is nobody is really worried, but people love you. People care about you.
Mm-hmm.
But those people aren't judging you if
They're
they
not
love
worried
you.
about what you're wearing. Or
Yeah,
what
the people at the mall, the
yeah.
people in your school, they're all worried about themselves.
Yeah.
Right? So there is a selfishness aspect, a lack of empathy. So sometimes when I'm talking with people who are struggling with anxiety or when I was counseling them, there was a lot of me talk. And I do eventually hit the point where I tell them that, you know, and again, this, just to be clear, this ties in with this topic because even the parent or coach who's dealing with this sort of behavior of, like, you know, screaming and angry at the world, it's again a self-obsession. You're obsessed with your kid and you're obsessed with your own self-esteem, by the way, here, right? So that's why we're bringing this up. So the way to get over this anxiety thing or focus on the self, which is really what it is to do things for others. You know, that's why one of the best counseling things for people with anxiety and depression, one of the best things that we recommend for people is to go volunteer, go do things. That's why the counselors today will tell people there's some, you know, well-known celebrities who've talked about that saved their life, going to volunteer in soup kitchens, and because that gets you outside of your own self. That gets you understanding other people and their plights.
Yeah.
Because again, when we're self-obsessed, we don't care about the coach's problems. We don't care about the rest of the team's problems. My kid's not playing. That's all that matters to me. So I'm going to go scream at someone. And that's not showing empathy. That's not showing understanding that the situation is more complex, more nuanced. There's other things going on here. Sometimes, like, that sort of ties in, by the way, that story that we talked about where that parent was asking me about when are we going to win? They're not understanding the full picture.
Yeah.
They haven't even, I mean, that person was nice enough to have a good conversation and he knew who I was as a player. And so that's why it was a conversation and very much a general, like a question. He wasn't angry. He wasn't being rude, but he was asking because he knew a little bit about my resume and stuff. And he said, you know, but his obsession was on what he wanted in his result. And the good thing about him is he was inquiring as to what my motives were. So that goes into our next point of, like, parents need to ask why a little more when they're dealing with these situations. So don't come up angry at the coach. I would recommend you have your player ask too, by the way, just going back, right? Parents, if your child's of a certain age, I think once they hit like 13, or not even 13, once they hit 14, 15, it's great to have your child ask. But let's be honest, the kids are terrified sometimes of situations. Yeah. So if you are going to ask, you know, for a younger player, on behalf of a younger player, you can always do it. I always say wait 24 hours before you send that email, or better yet, ask why, maybe in practice politely.
With your kid there with you?
With your kid there with you, or I mean, like I said, I don't know if this is sometimes the right advice, because it could backfire for parents too, and that's where they feel a little trapped. They don't want to be labeled as that parent. But I think if they do ever address, or maybe before they address, try to think about why the coach might be doing it. And if you do the other thing we talked about earlier, where if you teach your kid the opportunity in being overlooked, the opportunity in being treated a little bit unfairly, in terms of how you play and how you practice, that could help maybe make you not even want to ask the question.
Right? I feel for people in those situations, man. It sucks. It doesn't sound fun to deal with. I remember, watching your girls, and I don't know what.
It's tough.
What age of it? 15
it was 16 year, I think. Yeah.
It was rough to watch, and I'm just like.
And it wasn't even just like our kids.
No, it wasn't.
Sometimes my kid was the one playing too much.
Hundreds of kids. Yeah.
Sometimes it was like 6 games in a row, and you're like, what do you like? It was just It's very difficult for sure, and that's why we want to do these. This whole thing of Volleyballology is bringing parents, players, and coaches a little bit of understanding of what they're going through, because, and also some of the deeper issues that are behind it, because it's not a simple. I mean, if it was simple, it would have been fixed a long time ago. It's complex layers of. Yeah. I think though, we go back to that thing at the start. The root underneath everything is really that idea that, the further we go down this path of mass consumer culture and being marketed towards, and our phones in our pockets now, like they used to have to wait till you got home to watch TV, but now they could just make a bing go off in your pocket and market to you. The more we go down that path, the more volatile people are getting, and the more impatient people are getting with each other, with themselves, the more they dislike themselves. So I think that's at the root of it. And until humanity comes up with a solution for that, I think sports are even in danger. We talked about this briefly the other day.
Right.
This is the first time in a while where I've seen athletes who play a sport for several years, and they still haven't learned the lessons that used to be, I think, gleaned from sports almost universally.
Yeah, almost automatically. I know it's true. I think. Yeah, it seemed to happen after my generation or something, where you can go through sports at a high level and still, you'll be capped, that's for sure, if your mentality stays at entitled or short-sighted.
Yeah, blaming others.
Blaming. That beach tournament I played recently, actually, there's a great example of that, right? I forgot about that. I played just a fun men's fours beach tournament with it's coming up the end of the season. Well, I guess it's the end of the main season, but we still have some good weather here, right? But it was just a fun men's fours tournament. It was for a little bit of cash, and there's only 6 teams, and one of the teams was actually a young group of kids that we coached. They're all grown up now. The one is in his 3rd year. The younger brother is in his 1st or 2nd, or they're in 1st and 2nd. I forget.
Yeah.
And then they had their buddy there, and then one other young guy. And so I hadn't seen them in a while. They're all huge now and stuff. And so playing against them on the court, it was hilarious. They're like, oh, and then they're actually, their parents were there, funnily enough, and their parents weren't. They were just there to watch them have fun or whatever, right? But playing against them was pretty funny because, they're kind of chirping through the net and stuff, but having a great time. And then I'm still just roofing them and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was fun. But then, so these guys were 1st and 2nd year varsity, right? They're not playing varsity. Okay. They're just in university. And then we ended up playing against another team, younger guys. They were just going into their first university. And I remember them was wearing a university shirt that my buddy went to. So when we were both off, not playing, I just tried to strike up conversation. I'm like, oh, hey, you're going to that school? And he's like, oh, yeah. And then just a little bit of banter back and forth. But anyways, it wasn't really getting a warm reception. Anyways, and also these 4 kids, all of their parents were there.
So the other team how many parents were all, or just one parent?
Just one pair.
Okay.
The mom and dad. They happen to have 2 sons there,
Okay.
and then the other 2. The one was a friend, and then the other one was another kid who went through our program as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then the other team, the younger kids going into first year university, also going to play varsity as well because they're wearing their varsity gear. All their parents were there, right? And anyways, so when we play against this team, completely different attitude, and they're also fully decked out in like brand new Oakleys and like stuff like this, and so
the status symbols of authority and power. And
yeah,
the insecure.
They're indoor guys. Like maybe they played a little bit of beach. They're indoor guys, and again, it's beach 4s. It's not true 2s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it has a bit more of an indoor feel, anyways. And they're just taking the game way too seriously. And then my buddy didn't even know it. My buddy Pete, but he got blocked by one of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the kid actually stared him down through the net. Pete didn't notice. I told him after the game,
what's
right?
the age difference for people listening?
Oh, so these, I'm assuming if they're going in their first year, they're 17. Or no, they're 18.
17,
sorry.
18, yeah.
17, 18. And then me and Pete I'm 35. Pete's like 32.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so
It's a weird dynamic.
yeah, the stare down, and then like these kids are athletic. Like they're good.
Yeah.
They're going to be great players. Well, physically maybe. I don't know, mentally. Anyways, they had some big bounces. It was a fun game. It was like we blasted them in the first one. The second set was pretty tight. And then anyways, kid goes up to he just kept hitting the same lane. He just kept hitting a 5 every time, right? And so Pete adjusts, and he swings as hard as he can. Pete gets a block on him, and it was just this massive block that like everyone heard for like 4 courts down, right?
Yeah.
And they were just so like butthurt about it, man. And like obviously we're gonna do a big celebration because that's what we're gonna do, right? But yeah, and then anyway we win. They weren't having fun, man.
Yeah, the mindset.
They were not having fun at all. I remember the one guy was serving. The 2 guys that were in the back row, they had two front up blocking.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, hey man, like where are you, like he's at the back of the service line. He's like, hey man, where are you playing D? And the guy just walks, doesn't even like looking down, doesn't even say anything. I was like, and we can all see this body language on our side. We're like, oh. Anyways, so they just self-destructed, right?
Yeah. And when you mentioned this story to me before too, I asked you which team had more parents there, because it ties in with something else, like the spoon feeding that we talked about earlier, of parents doing too much for their kids. It's funny that the team that was entitled had all the parents there, and the team that was nice and jovial and fun had like a couple parents that were there for 2 siblings, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't have to be the case all the time.
No,
but it is a funny little thing that I when you first told me that story, and I instantly asked you how many parents were there from each team, because I see this all the time where like again on the beach is the easiest example, but in indoor too, like there are rude young players that are just entitled, and you look at the parent and the way they run around for that kid, of course they're entitled. I ask my wife all the time, like, can we do a little less for the kids? Because if you get everything ready for them, if you make their lunch, pack their binder, and then what the worst thing is, when volleyball moms know this everywhere around the world, if you forget to pack something for your kid, okay, that kid will yell at the mom, and I come in.
Not
and I go,
my time, bro. Not my time,
no,
man.
I know.
That never happened.
I know. Well, it didn't happen because 9 times out of 10 parents back then were like, "Hey, your volleyball tournament's tomorrow. Get your stuff ready." Like I remember getting my stuff ready for high school tournaments.
I forgot my shoes all the time, and I was the idiot.
But that's the beauty of it, right? Like by letting if you rob your kid of the opportunity to mess that stuff up, then you're robbing them of the opportunity to learn how to pack, and then how to get that self-esteem, right? Those kids that were cocky,
which leads to freedom for them.
Yeah, but those kids that were cocky in the tournament that you're talking about, they're really insecure, right? That's why they're wearing all the outfits. That's why they're buying the latest sunglasses and buying the latest look, because they need that to tell people they're real, right? Yeah. They're insecure because their parents haven't let them build up that self-esteem by messing up, remembering the next time, doing things for themselves and feeling like accomplished that, wow, I packed my own bag today. The best way, if you ever have a finicky eater, like
true.
a lot of parents have finicky eating kids.
What does that mean? Like they don't eat a lot?
Yeah,
or
the
picky?
kids are very picky eaters, right? So the best thing to do is to have your kid help cook dinner one night. And the kid,
Right.
because now that you've mixed in the feeling of accomplishment with that, and then they want to eat that. So it's the same thing with everything else in life. You got to give your kid a sense of accomplishment. And that's another thing that we're missing right now. And that's why kids are running to phones and social media to get their feeling of accomplishment or something, right? To feel, some self-esteem. They'll post a selfie and hope it gets lots of likes.
Yeah.
Because that's rooted in the fact that we're not giving them opportunities to develop that self-esteem by doing things for themselves.
Well, man, and I also feel bad for someone who's teenagers now, because I mean, your brain is weird when you're in high school, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like I cared, like I remember noticing what the really popular guys would wear in high school, and then I would, sure enough, that night I'm telling my mom, oh, I need to get a white sweater.
Yeah.
She's like, why? I'm like, I have to get one. It's like, you know what I mean? Like
the
some
snow lot. Yeah. It's just
yeah,
totally, or a TV star.
Because my brain is doing all this weird stuff, man. Like,
well, what is it really? So like it's super.
I remember
super
being
insecure.
Yeah, insecure. I remember, focusing on popular people. Like, thank goodness I had sports, and I had friends on every different sport team, and that probably kept me sane and like, just kept me like social with a bunch of people, made me feel me feel secure, right? And even despite that, I was still vulnerable to stuff like this, right?
Yeah, no, I remember I had to pay your teammates to hang out with you.
Yeah.
I've been your guru all along, Eric. I've never left. No, but
you guys used to, I know you weren't on that train, but they used to hustle us for money on that trip out east. Remember the volleyball trip we always used to do?
Oh no, see, I never went on that trip.
Dauber and Prada, man, they used to hustle us for money. Euchre.
Oh my God, we won't tell Lester because I think that's illegal.
Oh, whatever. That's hilarious.
No, but but it's true. It does go back to the idea that honestly, like it's, insecurity, anxieties, self-loathing, all of these things come out as toxic waste in dealing with people. So sometimes, maybe the best advice for parents too, honestly, like the parents who have their own things going on tend to, they're not just living for their kid all the time.
Yeah.
Let's face it, that's what makes a kid think you're lame as a parent. If you're always doting on them, they don't respect you. So parents, make sure that you're doing your own thing sometimes, and don't be afraid to tell your kid, you know what, your tournament's coming up tomorrow. Why don't you pack your bag tomorrow? Why don't you make a list of things you need? A lot of parents are great at this. Some parents, they'll be surprised that some parents just do everything for their kid. And then if that kid, like you said, you forgot your shoes or you forgot something, talk about, will you ever forget your shoes? You know what I mean? The rest, like that, the less.
Pretty sure I still did. But.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but the more you do it, the more it sticks in your head, right?
Yeah.
You make that mistake once, or in your case, 12 times, and then
I'm a hard learner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did your daughter like drive to? Doesn't she drive to like league night now and stuff?
Yeah, yes,
right.
That was a cool thing. Yeah, we started doing that, and even I let them, like I told them, like, let's not play on the same team anymore. We used to play together. I said, like, because I want to make sure it's their thing, right? And I was noticing the last few times we played, it was getting to be like work, or like they'd be chippy about it, and so yeah, they I said let's play. You guys play with your friends, go do your thing, and I'll play with my friends, because even I was missing having fun, being able to.
Well, dude, as soon as I was 16, because my parents were like, well, we're not going to drive you to 6:30 a.m. practice anymore, so get your license on the day of my birthday, literally, and then I think you're supposed to wait like 6 or 8 months to. Anyway,
yeah, were you that age? Did you have to wait?
I literally got my G1 on my birthday.
Yeah, because when I was driving, we could. Literally, we passed our driving test, and we could take the car the next day and drive to Vermont. Like we could. Oh, there was no restrictions on.
I'm pretty sure. No. Yeah. Because I remember driving to as soon as we could, like, because my parents were like, we're not driving you anymore, like, and then it was all my siblings as well, right? So we had just a little. My parents, I was lucky; they had a little beater car.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean. maybe that's some advice. If you have like a shitty little car, don't give them a shitty car, but
Send your kids
if they
off
can
into a death trap.
if they can get their license as soon as possible, take some. And that's a huge responsibility.
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know if we talked about this to you, but like I said to my wife, like, you watch the change in our daughter when she gets her license.
I remember you mentioned that,
and it was night and day. Like the day she got her license,
that's a big thing, man.
And the first time she was able to take the car somewhere, like, totally changed her, because you're in control of something.
Yeah,
and most parents
dangerous.
And let's face it, like, by parents doing a lot for their kids, they are delaying adulthood, right? Like, we are seeing this across society, right? Where
I'm just a big baby.
No, you're not. No, you think you are, but you're not. Like, if there's standards that people have that they think that they're not as grown up, but behavior, and I mean, even just doing this sort of thing we're doing, it takes hours of work, hours of time. That proves that you're not.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, we're only 2 shows in, so we'll see. And Meech missed this episode.
Yeah.
So. But we are delaying adulthood, and so many people hashtag adulting, and they think that that's like this big deal that they're
if it's
paying
a hashtag,
their own
it's
bills.
a meme and it's a joke at this point.
Yeah,
right?
but it's like it's a weird thing. Like, you're supposed to be an adult. Like, you're supposed to be doing hard things, and you're supposed to be doing all that stuff. So another big thing is, like, parents aren't allowing kids to go through, like, just bring it back to volleyball. Like, parents aren't allowing their kids to. One thing I love about some of the beach programs out there is that the kids go do it all themselves.
Yeah,
They show up, and that's where the beach. I mean, when we were playing, and I know a lot of other pro players that I played with and against, they said that that's why they went to the beach, because they could be free there. And sometimes they even had a toxic coach, or they had other parents around and players that they didn't like, and too many other factors out of their control. The beach was kind of freedom, because they went out there. No parents, no coaches. You were gonna pass. You were gonna set. You were gonna hit. You were gonna get the reps. You were gonna get the working in the sand.
Dude, and if they get into like a competitive like playoff game, like, there's no better mental training or whatever you want to call it than those pressure moments, because it's only you. You're getting that next contact, man. Like, that's the best thing.
There's nowhere to hide.
There's nowhere to hide, and like it's killer. It's so good, and the good thing about that is that it forces you to give up on this dwelling on the future and the past, and you just almost in a way you just surrender or relax into the moment.
Yep.
There's no better mental training for that.
And what I like about what's happened with a lot of beach programs is they've forbidden parents from coaching or yelling things out,
like during games and
stuff. Which adds a little more to it. Like, so even if you see something horrific,
sucks that they had to even ban that. Like, what was going on? Like,
well, I mean, you can imagine that's the thing. It was tainted by parents.
Parents ruining.
No, no, it's but if it wasn't the parents, it would be like coaches.
Yeah,
it would have been like like if coaches were coming out on the beach in droves. You just have to let the kids. So it still is being protected in some areas that way. I hope it's like that in wherever people are listening, or if they're listening somewhere far away from us. But the idea is that the parent has to be willing to be quiet a little bit, right? Not so vocal, and let your kid go through that. I think that's the beneficial thing. But we talked about delusional parent. I talked about insecure parents, over involvement. Wanting to win now, that crossed over into that coaching episode. Yeah. Patience, long-term thinking, understands process. Anything on your list? Channel the anger into a positive opportunity.
Yeah. Well, did we go enough into that? How we were saying sports used to kind of automatically provide a framework to develop a child to have a resilient mental attitude, or to be able to approach life with a certain strength, I suppose, right? But now we're starting to see that there's now a divergence, right, where they get into sports. Oh yeah, I guess we did talk about it, just maybe not too much, but I don't know how to explain it too well, but if the child is still, well, it all comes back into this, with the parent and their kid. But if the kid is coddled too much or whatever, they still hold on to that feeling of entitlement, and maybe they're still doing well because they're just physically talented. But instead of kind of taking on more responsibility on their own, or letting your child sit in those difficult situations, what's going to happen is their mental game is going to end up fracturing, I guess, and it's kind of splitting off, right? And then one of those routes has a plateau, right? It has a limit. And then the other one is where excellence like can be found, right? You know, I saw it when I was developing. There's young athletes, and they peaked. They were amazing, 16, 18, but they ended up hitting a wall, right? Some of them even hit a wall physically because they their coaches, you know, would play them too much or whatever, right? Kind of screw up their knees and stuff. But also their attitude ended up hitting a plateau where they thought they had learned everything. They thought no one else had anything to teach them.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, that, and I don't know why. I met a few players like that, and those were the ones that fell off the progression line of that sport first, basically, right? And then kind of the rest of us who were just innately humble. I don't know if not intentionally meaning to be, but just kind of just through
Willing
respect,
willing to
learn. Yeah.
No, I think what you're getting at there is the idea. Like, so the question that we talked about the other day was, is this the first generation where sports is not going to produce the confidence, humility that it normally had produced in the past across? I mean, I think
just more noticeably.
Yeah, there were always jerks in the culture.
Yeah.
But because so many people are playing volleyball now, let's stick with volleyball. It might be, I've seen players like we talked about earlier that finished their whole career of club ball and they still are blaming others.
Yeah.
Have that, you know, I call it fake arrogance. Like, it's, let's face it, real confidence is humility, right? Real confidence is humility versus arrogance, which is really hiding insecurity. So, you know, if it loses that ability, that's interesting. And I can actually, I used to tell the story quite a bit. I think I probably told you, like, so there's a small club in our area that would always lose, right? They would never win against the big city clubs. And that and the other big city clubs, there was one club that did very well, and it would win all the gold medals and all the championships and national championships even back in the day. And so I'm just talking about on the men's and on the boys' side of things.
This is when you played?
This is when I coached. So when I was coaching. So because remember, club was just getting started when I played, right? It was very new. So high school ball was it back when we played. But anyway, that little club that never won anything ended up producing like 3 or 4 national team members. And the club that had all the early success and all the winning had 0. And I always tell that story because, you know, it's talk about the benefit of losing, talk about the benefit of maybe being benched, talk about the benefit of struggle. Those kids kept working their asses off while the other kids, like you were talking about, thought they knew it all. You know, you get a gold medal at 15, age 15, 16.
Yeah.
There's no more struggle involved, and maybe you don't work that hard because it's been easy. It's kind of like a universal law again about success in life, right? People who get successful early on in life have a hard time working their asses off when they need to later, right? It's the difference between inherited wealth, for example, like inheriting wealth versus earning wealth, right? People who inherit wealth invariably don't do too well and don't work too hard, don't have a great work ethic.
And you can't blame them because they didn't.
Yeah,
it's
not a fault.
Right?
Yeah, and then
but this club team, it sounds like the players and the parents were able to. Well, they just put faith in the system.
Well, I don't think it was a conscious thing. I think it was a geographical thing. They understood that, okay, our quiet little players from out in the middle of a small town.
These coaches had a vision or a goal or something, and then they were allowed to let it follow through, right?
Yeah, I think it was quality versus noise. You know, I like to say it like that. Like, there's noise in, like, you know, why is the big city team getting the results? It's pretty obvious that it's because of sheer numbers.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say bigger.
Sheer numbers.
Right.
But sometimes those people playing in those types of organizations start believing in their own magic, and they think that they are great, when really this hard work going on when nobody's watching in that other little town.
Yeah, man, it's true. If there's too much population, because that's only going to support the idea, I'm going to do what works now to be better than that player to get on this team, right? Instead of like, hey, I'm just going to do this even though I'm not good at it right now. I'm going to do this because it's the right thing developmentally.
Well, and I think the other thing too, like,
You
so
know?
even taking out all that other stuff out of it, you got two players. Okay, one player is getting his ass kicked or her ass kicked for 3 or 4 years. The other player is breezing through. Who's going to be better equipped when they meet that wall 5 years later?
Yeah, the one who's facing adversity all the time.
They're going to be able. It's like what I was talking about with getting our kid going through a little bit of bullying at a young age.
Yeah.
And me telling the wife, is that better to have it now than later?
Yeah.
Because then she can handle it later, or they can handle it later. Because if you meet it late in life, this is true in school too. Like as a teacher, like if you saw a kid breeze through school without struggling, they often struggled in first year post-secondary because they never faced something that was challenging.
Yeah, it was me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Did you breeze through high school? You had good marks?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I mean.
And then I failed something in university, and it just hit me like a wall.
Yes.
I don't know what to do.
Exactly, yeah. And happened in my family too. Like I had a brother who was valedictorian, breezed through school, went to first year university, almost flunked out for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
Like he never partied in high school.
Yeah.
And then he also just didn't know how to handle adversity. Right, so there's a lot to be said for
that.
early. Yeah, you're welcome. See?
I'm learning. Yeah.
I'm always here to help, Eric.
Huh.
So I just want to show. I mean, Eric looks pretty. Like I'm just looking at you on the monitor. You look like you're.
Oh, I'm kind of slumped. So.
No, you just look like you were like really blown away there and really impressed with me. I think I have to charge you for these episodes.
Is that?
This is like free therapy.
Yeah. I was gonna say something I completely forgot.
Good.
Yeah.
Was it? Oh, I was talking about adversity. You said that just hit you. You never thought of it before. That maybe that's part of the stress you faced in first year. My brother was valedictorian, breezed through school, almost flunked out in first year. My other brother, who was my oldest brother, he struggled through high school, barely got through, took a year off, went and got a shitty job that he hated, went back to university and
motivated.
Yeah, straight A's all
has
the way
a reason,
through.
purpose.
Shitty stuff, hard stuff you hate. Made him go, oh, screw that. And school was a breeze for him. He won like scholarships every year. He became a lawyer.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, other than the ending of that story, it's a pretty good story until he becomes a lawyer. No, just kidding. So yeah, I think we covered everything here. I mean, I think the advice for parents is like, start to learn to be comfortable with bad situations for your kids. Understand that you don't necessarily need to go and complain to the coach. One, the coach might have some more knowledge than you and might be doing something tactical. Or the other alternative is that they're an idiot, and in which case you don't have to reason with an idiot. It's hard to reason with an idiot if you feel they are an idiot.
How do you know they're an idiot, though?
Well, that's
it's
the thing.
It's going to take a few conversations, probably, right?
Yeah, and either way, though, the solution is probably to pull back and just focus on your kid and tell them the benefit of this hard thing happening.
Yeah.
Right? I'd rather that you deal with adversity here while you're still in my care and in my home and in with me where you have love and support than if it happened to you something worse, 10 years down the road or something.
Yeah.
So there's value in that.
Definitely wait a day before sending that email. That's usually
and maybe don't even send the email.
Yeah,
that's if you're focusing on I sort of misspoke earlier when I said that. I would take that back and say that it's probably better to sit with the hard time, teach your player that it's a good thing. Tell them to swing for the fences, play aggressively. It's a gift. Adversity is a gift. I think we clearly established a lot of that.
Because you and your kid are going to have much more, you're going to learn a lot more or develop a lot more if you're talking about this difficult coach you're with, instead of you both being like, oh yeah, they're such an idiot. Now you're teaching your kid to just be like, yeah, they are an idiot. Right. And then it's like, you're getting nowhere.
Right. I mean, one of the big cliches is, everybody has something to learn from somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody can everybody here can
Legit.
teach you something, right? And every person that you encounter who's an obstacle.
All these little sayings come true now that I'm in adult life, working the job or whatever. And
people forget all these truths, these old, I don't want to say, even old wives' tales, but even old cliched lines, right? The obstacle is the way is an old phrase that came back recently in the form of a book title. And
my hard ass boss that I used to have, I'm now wishing I had him.
I thought you were saying my hard ass boss was another old term.
No.
My hard ass boss I
No,
used to have.
Not a term. We can
Okay.
make one. Maybe we keep saying it.
Sorry, what were you saying? Your hard ass boss? What?
Yeah, my previous boss, who was a hard ass,
Okay.
right, and now my new one, who's just super soft, but he wants. I hope he doesn't listen.
Well,
We
I mean,
never.
are we comparing the hardness of their asses?
No.
Okay, because you said hard ass, and now this new one's very soft.
Yeah. I guess that sounds weird.
It just no, it doesn't sound weird. It's just
he's
different.
not soft. What he does is the new boss. He hides behind. He just basically delegates everything off under the guise of teamwork.
So is your new boss won't see this?
No,
Okay,
there's not.
good. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
So he hides by delegation.
But he says all of it in the name of teamwork and stuff. He says, "Hey guys, I want you to work as a team," and basically just makes us do offshores his own work onto us. Essentially, it's hilarious.
Interesting. And he doesn't think that you guys are smart enough to see that.
I don't know what it is, man. I think he knows. Like I know that he doesn't know technical stuff. Like it's just super obvious. He'll even ask me some questions. But no, I think all he does is he just keeps spouting this teamwork shit. He just keeps spouting it, man. And coming from I don't know team sport background, like it just works me up. Again, I haven't like done anything. I haven't like criticized him harshly or anything.
Yeah,
I try to always keep it professional. I give him feedback.
Well,
but
right there, you said right there, you're showing restraint, right? You're showing restraint in a difficult situation. You're not, escalating it. That's a big one for parents, right? The escalation. You're not being that person,
right? Because I think I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah.
I understand why he is the way he is. He's brought up through the company. He's trained in their own way.
Yep.
Whereas the previous boss came from, first he was an immigrant, and then I don't know how he got into it, but he came from a different company, right? And then he right into a management role, right? So I think he had his own style from his own culture, brings that here, and then his own previous work. So it's just very, very different.
Of course, yeah.
He was ultimately a micromanager, also not a very good boss, but he the quality of service that we provided under his management was far superior than it is now.
Right.
Far superior.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah. And I think what you're saying, like what started that topic for you was the idea that you're learning more in bad situations.
Yeah.
And that's making you
both
better.
Both bosses were a bad situation. Both.
Yeah. That's true.
The thing is,
but you have like as a person, like, let's be honest, right? As unhappy as you've been in this role and how, sort of unfair it's been for you, I think we can both agree that you have grown substantially from this difficult time.
I think I can fairly say that.
Yeah.
Can I make an assessment of myself?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you're physically taller. No, you've grown. No, for sure. And there was something in there too that you mentioned that was going to trigger a thought in me that was very interesting that I wanted to say before we went on. You were talking about delegating.
Was it the hard?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, it's 6-minute glutes. I have a new workout video.
Well, are we going to wrap this up?
Yeah, we should wrap it up. It was too bad
flat?
because I had an idea that was really related to parents. Oh, sorry. Yeah, it was when you said about that you haven't said something. And I think that there is and you said you understood where the person was coming from. And I think that's really cool and interesting because parents, I'm definitely going to say there is some futility in addressing the coach or arguing with the coach and the coach pushing back because
futility. What do you mean?
Well, it's kind of useless to try to change someone is basically what I'm getting at here because the only thing that will change a coach is your child working their ass off and trying to do this solution that we talked about before where in practice, just wail.
Yeah.
And because here's the thing. Their life story.
Green light, yeah.
Well, no, the coach's life story brought them to a certain place and certain time and certain set of beliefs. You are not going to undo the 30, 40 years of whatever has happened to them. Like we talked about a lot of things here, like bullying and layers of things that have made us who we are, genetic and environmental. You're not going to, in a 5-minute screaming match or a 1-page angry uppercase email, you're not going to change this person.
Yeah.
you are just going to escalate
You're
and
just gonna red
aggravate.
flag yourself.
Yeah, red
Yeah.
flag yourself, red flag your kid, and you're going to
Yeah.
just escalate the situation. So
And it just doesn't feel good, you know, like
Yeah.
when you act in that way, like every time I have in the past, and like, I try not to, but it has happened for sure, and I literally immediately regret it. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah, it makes you feel bad, but it also it's useless to try to undo someone's life story with words. in a
Yeah, and
moment.
I'm talking about being rude to someone.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I've now learned to craft criticism where I believe it's appropriate for me to say it, like you know, respectfully, because there's a different, you know,
Yeah.
manager to
Yes.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't want to burn bridges and feel
and I
like,
don't want to
yeah.
burn bridges. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just from the parent's perspective, just make sure that you you understand that that person has gotten that way for a reason, and you aren't gonna fix that, make that light. That doesn't happen, right?
No.
Like, nobody says, "Oh my God, my whole existence has been wrong. Thank you."
Yeah.
That doesn't that doesn't happen. So you're dealing with layers of stuff that you don't understand. Just like the coaches, obviously, are trying to address situations and trying to bang their head against the wall, trying to change parents. And there's a lot of layers there on that side. So the only thing you can do is control yourself, and maybe teach your child the benefit of whatever shitty situation's going on, and teach them to play free. Because if you feel, here's the other thing too. If that coach is the type of person that you feel is unfair, and you might be right. Let's face it, a lot of parents are right. Then that coach will only respond to brute
Yeah.
play and like loud thumps, loud noises, big bumps, screaming players. There's coaches that actually force their teams to be loud.
Be loud.
Yeah, and it's artificial, right? They're trying to get their kids to impersonate loud teams, and there's parents who do this too, right? If your kid is not loud, they don't have to be loud. They can celebrate in their own way. And we talked about this in the last episode. Some of the most devastating players we've ever played with and against were quiet assassins who just did their stuff, and it's more terrifying.
I was literally about to say that.
More
when
terrifying.
they're just like same
Yeah.
expression, killing it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God.
Yeah, and I was not to, but that's how I played. So this is why I'm adamant about, like, if I hit a hard spin serve or cranked a ball straight down on someone, I didn't go celebrating. I just walked back and did my next serve, or I just high-fived and moved on, right? So,
Yeah.
and I, not to brag, but I see that sometimes in my kid too. Like, the younger one especially is a little more quiet.
Just business as usual.
Business as usual. Spin serve ace, go back, do it again.
Yeah.
And there's humility in that, and there's like intimidation in a good way.
Yeah.
But confidence too, right? You don't need the loud cheer. So parents, I think we're rambling a bit now, but yeah. Anything, Dad?
Anything, Dad?
Anything to add?
I'm messing with you. No. There's no. I think I don't know. We were talking about anxiety and depression earlier, and like, we're not trying to short sight that stuff, but
No.
I think I have more to talk on that later, because you're right. When you are in that mode, like, you are only thinking about yourself. But again, we can talk about this later, but like, I remember when I was in my bout of depression, like, it was all about me. And then I used to use the excuse of like, I don't want to hang out with you because I don't want to dump my negativity on you.
Right.
It was a weirdly
that's very common.
empathetical, selfish thing. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but again, I'm just trying to say you're not trying to undervalue the
not
seriousness
to
of anxiety and stuff like
but
that.
I'm talking about how parents can help when they see early signs.
Right.
When they see early signs, it is a good thing to sometimes allow your child to sit with uncomfortable situations. It used to be a long time ago they would say, "Oh, let the baby cry in the crib for a while."
Yeah.
That was sort of the or like the earliest. Let that kid cry a little bit if they're fed, if they're changed, if the diaper's dry, if they're fed, if they've been burped.
Yeah.
Sometimes they want attention, and some people say that, well, that's maybe you should give the baby attention. That's okay too.
Right.
But sometimes they used to say that, let the kid cry a little bit, and because I mean, it's the quickest way for someone to get attention. Sometimes is to fake an injury. Right, when we're little, sometimes we say, "Oh, I hurt my knee," but you didn't really hurt your knee. You just want a hug from mom or dad, right?
Yeah.
So, and kids know that. And so parents have to be, I think when you see your child at a young age exhibiting a fear that isn't really real, like tangible fear, obviously, like, you know, if it's fear of a situation, I would tend to push my kid into that gently, because the more you pull them out of those situations, the only thing you're teaching them is that fear, even mommy or daddy or even the adult here, thinks that fear is real enough to leave the situation.
It is irrational.
It is. Like, I can tell you honestly how many fears of my own kids that
you can talk with them and logically dissect it, right?
Yeah, and we've kiboshed the fear through.
Yeah.
Like my kids, like, you know, they were terrified of swimming. One of them. And we were just like, no, come on. It's not that scary. You can do this. You can do this. Put them in it. There was some cheering, screaming. There was some crying. This is what'll
happen. You'll get wet.
Yeah. And you know, here, try. You know, you're so afraid to put your face down in the water, but that's actually what's making you sink, because you're lifting up your head and then your butt sinks. So put your face down. No, I don't want. And then, oh my God, it's so fun. Thank you. And now they're both loving swimming and all that stuff. So, you know, there is, you know, again.
Zuby had 3 kids. He has 2 now.
That's not funny at all. That's not funny at all. What are you, sadistic freak, you? Anyway, on that note, I think that's good for today. So yeah, we'll be back with another episode next week. Hope you enjoyed this one. It was a long one, but an important one. And yeah, that's all from us, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good.
Great job, Eric. Great job,
Dad.
Hey, that's your nickname.
What's the big idea?